Hello, good morning everyone. Okay na po ba tayo? Okay, so magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. So good morning to those who are watching, well, not in the Philippines. So welcome. So I am May John Aguila. I am your host for today. Okay. And we are really excited about this topic and I bet you are as well. So for today, we have research topics in the time of COVID-19 pandemic. So simula nung nag-start tong pandemic tapos nilaunch namin ulit tong PhilSci Hub, madaming mga nagtatanong about this type of webinar if we are going to give it. And ito na nga, so meron na tayo. Before we start, we kindly request everyone to please mute and video off. So while we have the webinar ongoing, unless of course meron kayong tanong, so i-recognize namin kayo and then you can ask your question live. And strictly, no recording of the session. Don't worry because the full video of the event will be posted in many of our platforms. Next slide. Isa ulit na karaniwang mga tanong natin would be the certificate of participation. Yes, we will be giving out certificate of participation for this. And we will post the Google form link later in the Zoom chat box, in the live comments in YouTube, or when you access the video later. So we have the video description in YouTube. And we also encourage you to subscribe to PhilSci Hub's official YouTube channel. So you'll be updated to what is being posted in YouTube. So once again, welcome everyone to Philippine Science Hub. And I'm giving you Jeff Bungkin, the founder of PhilSci Hub, to tell us a little bit more about this organization. Jeff?
Okay, maraming salamat po, Professor Joan Aguila. Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. Ako po si Jeffrey Bunkin. Ako po ang founder ng Filipino Science Hub. Ako po ay nakabase dito sa Houston, Texas, sa Amerika. So, para po sa araw na ito, gusto ko po munang ipakilala sa inyo ang ating platform. So, Filipino Science Hub is a platform that we founded back in 2012, and its main purpose is to promote the cultures of STEM education and research among teachers and students in the Philippines. So, kami po, ang PhilSci Hub po ay binubuo ng 6 na miyembro ng leadership team na mula sa iba't ibang mga Pilipinong scientists at mga educators na nakabase sa iba't ibang lugar sa mundo. So we have Dindy Yu from the left, the picture the person you're seeing on the left side of your screen. Dindy Yu is actually the head of our international affairs, and she's currently a quality and technical manager of in one of the leading paints and coating companies in the world. So nasa ano po siya ngayon, nasa Kentucky in the US. Marty Mateo is one of the heads of PhilSci Hub Education. So ito po ay isang programa na aking i-discuss mamaya. And Marty is a researcher at the Institute of Plant Breeding in UP Los Baños. Next is JP Onya, who's the head of PhilSci Hub Research University. Siya po ay kasalukuyan nag-aaral para ma-earn ang kanyang doctorate degree in electrocatalysis, and he's currently based in Turku, Finland. And then we have Professor May Joan Aguila, who's a professor of chemistry at the Institute of Chemistry in UP Los Baños. So she's an expert in organometallic chemistry and catalysis, and one of our great young chemistry educators in the country right now. Next is Janice Avrilia, who is a researcher at Kansas Medical Center. Siya po ay isa ding Pilipino na nag-aaral sa abroad at ngayon po ay naglilingkod sa ating bayan kahit po siya ay nasa Kansas dito sa Amerika. And then lastly po is Ralph Lauren Alomia, who's an assistant professor of chemistry in UP Los Baños. So kami po yung bumubuo ng leadership team ng PhilSci Hub sa ngayon. So ano ba yung vision ng PhilSci Hub? So the vision of Filipino Science Hub is to hopefully see help build a technology and innovation-driven Philippines. And paano ba natin ma-achieve to? So we can only achieve this if we are able to launch a new generation of STEM researchers or STEM practitioners. And so, ang usapan po dito ay kultura. At paano ba tayo makakapag-launch ng culture? So, in addition to promoting STEM education, yung knowledge po kasi natin, we have to be able to apply it. So, we are coupling our educational program with foundations of research. So, it's how you apply the knowledge that you learn from books, the knowledge that you learn from your teachers through lectures, and by applying them, you would be able to develop the ability to create and innovate. So ito po yung gusto namin talagang i-establish sa atin dyan sa Pilipinas. Ito po ang core mission and vision ng aming platform. Okay. So at this point, I would actually so I would like to give the floor to Phil Hub Ed's head, Marty Mateo, and just so we can actually talk about like our current program.
Ayan. So, thank you, Kuya Jeff. So, as the head of the Filipino Science Hub's education program, so ito po yung vision namin for in the future for PhilSci Hub Ed. So, we made the PhilSci Hub Ed as one of the main branches of PhilSci Hub to train academic frontliners. So far, we have around 30,000 PhilSci Hub members, which are mostly educators. And these educators can impact at least 30 students per year. So if they have a career for 30 years, because most of our followers are actually in their young years on their career. So meron pa silang mga 30 years na pwede silang magturo. So ang total impact po nito kapag pinagsama-sama yung buong career nila, and a conservative figure pa nga lang po yung 30 students, kasi alam po natin sa Pilipinas it can reach up to 45, 50 per class. So we are projecting that we can impact around 27 million students in the future. Next slide, please. All right. So ito po yung mga naunang programa ng PhilSci Hub Education. So we have teaching webinars. Ito po nung mga umpisa pa ng pandemic, nung lahat po tayo ay nangangapa kung paano po ang distance learning and online learning. So we offered some resources for online teaching. So yan po. Available po pa rin yan sa ating YouTube channel. So kung gusto niyo pong mapanood ang effective way to teach on an online setting, you can still browse our webinars through our YouTube channel. Next slide, please. Also, since nag-evolve po ang PhilSci Hub Ed, after po ng mga teaching webinars, nakita naman po namin that there is a need for modules. So, nilaunch po namin yung aming PhilSci Hub modules, and we have 3 young module warriors, kung tawagin namin sila. They are BS MST, Math and Science Teaching at UP Los Baños. So, sila po si IMG Aguila, si Ivy Rituya, and Mark Cortez. Sila po yung gumagawa ng mga modules namin ngayon na pinopost po namin sa PhilSci Hub to aid our teachers in, of course, their teaching. So, kumpleto po yung modules namin from the lecture up to the problem-solving part. So, if this is the first time that you are tuning into Filipino Science Hub, please go to our website dahil nakakompile po lahat, www.philscihub.com. Nakakompile po doon lahat ng modules per subject na ginawa po ng aming module warrior. So, pwedeng-pwede nyo po yung i-access for your teaching. Next slide, please. I turn now the table to Kuya JP, the floor to Kuya JP.
Okay, thank you, Marty. Let me talk about PhilSci Hub Research University, another campaign of Filipino Science Hub. And this program is focusing on scientific research on the high school and college level. And here, we are going to share some of the best practices in terms of carrying out a research project. And we will also share our own research experiences para po ma-equip
yung mga estudyante po natin on the right attitude and mindset towards research. And we will also share some tips and advices on that. Next slide. So the PhilSci Research University program is composed of 8 mandatory courses. So we have research ideation, literature review, all the way to the poster and conference presentation. So iisa-isahin po natin yan. And right now, we are almost halfway through. Katatapos lang po namin ng research proposal writing last month. Was it last month? Opo. And then yung next po namin na course offering would be a statistical design of experiments. So that's gonna be on April 17. So watch out for that. And yung mga susunod po up until July, pakiantabayanan na lang po the announcements. Okay, next slide. So i-share ko po mamaya yung some of the finer details of PhilSci Hub Research University because we all mentioned this in our grand launch held last January. And ayun, dun po sa certificates na i-roll out po namin later, you will find there the link to this launch. You can also find this on YouTube. And we've also devised a Google Classroom for this campaign. So nandun din po yung invitation link for the Google Classroom where you can access all the past webinars for PhilSci Hub Research University, and lahat po nung magwa-watch or magpa-participate dun sa post ano na po. Panoorin nyo lang po yung mga past webinars, yung mga video recordings. We can also issue certificates of participation for you. Basta ma-complete nyo lang po yung all 8 mandatory courses. We will give you a completion certificate para and that yun po yung magsisignify na parang you went through all the process of research topics, all the aspects of research, and we will give you the completion certificate for that. And I hope we can also do like a formal ceremony for the handover of these completion certificates and become officially a part of the PhilSci Hub research community. Kasi we are marami po kaming plano for PhilSci Hub Research University. Would like to take this further until next year para magkaroon po tayo ng like a virtual conference if the pandemic still drags on, unfortunately. Okay, next slide. Okay, so shall I talk about this or?
Yeah.
Okay, so PhilSci Hub is present in many platforms. So meron po kaming Facebook page. We have the YouTube, and you can always just type in PhilSci Hub and that will pop out. We're even present in TikTok. And you can always check our full content on our website, www.philscihub.com. And you will find there all the webinars, the tutorials, modules, virtual labs, and some of our features. So last week, feature po namin si Dr. Crisita Carmen Atienza, a Filipina scientist in the US. And ayun, magaganda po yung mga features namin, and kindly check it out on our website. And marami pa po kaming offering. Just stay tuned and see you all sa mga susunod po namin na activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. So, nakita nyo naman po kung paano nag-grow yung PhilSci Hub. So, from a merely web Facebook page, so we have launched a PhilSci Hub Ed, and then we have a PhilSci Hub University. This is to address yung needs na sinabi nyo sa amin. So, again, we would like to invite you to participate sa PhilSci Hub University para magkaroon tayo ng completion na certificate later on, and of course, para maging officially kabilang kayo sa PhilSci Hub community. So without further ado, so let's move on to the topic for today. And I'm giving you back all those three guys, handsome guys that with me right now to, of course, introduce themselves. So, JP,
Okay, back to me. So, uh, I forgot to introduce myself. No, my name is JP Onya, and right now I'm a doctoral student here in Finland. I'm now currently based in Turku, Finland, and I'm doing my doctoral studies here at Obo Academy University. So, I finished my bachelor's degree in UP Los Baños in 2008, and right after that, I worked at Petron, and in 2016, I decided to pursue masteral studies in Estonia, and then I carried out the continuation in Finland, where I am currently based now. So, throughout my career, my research interests would include analytical chemistry, electrochemistry, and ano yung nasa baba? Yeah, and
Electrocatalysis.
electrocatalysis and metrology, actually. Ayan. Next slide. So I will hand over the screen now to John Marty.
Welcome back to me. Okay, so again po, my name is John Marty Mateo and I graduated from UPLB. So same with Kuya JP, I'm also a BS Chemistry graduate. And I am now working as a university researcher at the Institute of Plant Breeding at UPLB. And just to give you an overview of my research career, I am now involved or was involved in 11 approved externally funded projects related to agriculture. Most of these are actually multidisciplinary projects. Next slide, please. So this is just my research career. I started at UP Diliman as a research associate at the Natural Science Research Institute. So I studied polymer chemistry and synthetic organic chemistry for controlled drug delivery systems. And then I transferred to UP Los Baños to teach at the Institute of Chemistry. So I taught general chemistry and organic chemistry laboratory classes. And then right now I am still at UP Los Baños, but I returned to research. So I am now at the Institute of Plant Breeding, heading the analytical service laboratory of the Institute of Plant Breeding. So far, I have published 5 ISI and Scopus Index journals and also two peer-reviewed papers. So I turn the floor to Kuya Jeff. Nakamute ka, Kuya.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I didn't know I was muted. So, bali, ako po si Jeffrey Buntin. Ako po yung pinakamatanda sa aming tatlo. Gaya po nila, I'm also a graduate of chemistry from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, actually back in 2006. After that po, I worked in the Philippines for a couple of years. I taught for a year in UPLB as a chemistry laboratory instructor, and then I moved to Philippine National Petroleum Corporation. So I worked as a laboratory chemist there. And then after that, I actually moved to Canada po to earn my doctorate degree in chemistry from 2009 to about 20 middle of 2013. After that po, I actually moved to the US for a couple of job stints. So I actually worked as a staff scientist at Argonne National Laboratory, which is a US government research facility. So doon po kami nag-perform ng fundamental science research that are related to energy, and I specialized in catalysis research. So development of catalysts, development of processes to produce chemicals and energy, as well as materials engineering. So ang dami po namin ginawa, and then spectroscopy to be added. And then in 3 years ago, I actually joined one of the major chemical companies in the world, which is a subsidiary of one of the world's largest publicly traded oil and gas company. So at the moment, I'm working as a senior research engineer po sa kanilang R&D research facility. And over a span of 14 years po of doing research, starting from my undergrad years, I have already published about 16 international publications, and then more than 25 inventions na rin po. So what we're hoping to be able to do today po is to guide high school and college students po on topics that you guys can pursue at home. Kasi alam po namin paralisado lahat ng ating kapasidad na pag-perform ng research ngayon. Kahit po college level at high school level hindi makapunta sa school, walang access sa lab, mahirap bumili ng resources, ng supplies. So ito po yung palaging hinihingi sa amin since we delivered our first a research university training course back, I think, in September of last year na ano po ba yung mga topics na pwede namin gawin sa bahay. So ito po, 6 months after, we got flooded with those questions. Nagbabalik po kami, and actually thanks to Marty Mateo, because this is actually his initiative. Sabi niya, gusto niya bigyan ng sagot yung mga follow-up questions ng teachers at students natin. So, bali po sa talk natin ngayon, meron pong 3 parts yan. Yung unang part po, JP Onya will go over some fundamentals of research. So ano ba yung iba't ibang klase po ng research depende sa nature or sa application, depende sa objectives, and then depende sa kung anong klase ng data. So the types of data that you generate from research. So you can categorize research topics, according to those metrics. Part 2 naman po, which is actually the main point na medyo ito, where we're going to be talking about like a lot of potential topics that you can pursue at home. Marty Mateo is actually going to cover that. So he will provide suggestions as to topics that high school and college students can pursue at home or within the bounds of their locality. So we highly encourage you po to take down notes kasi he will be identifying or listing down like a number of possible research that you can pursue at home as early as tomorrow if you have the drive for it. And then the third part po, which I will deliver, is about the brainstorming process. So kasi po, this usually I don't think Filipino students and teachers at the high school and college level really practice this much na how do you actually generate idea? Like for a teacher, how do you solicit ideas from your students? So and if it comes to a point na ang gagaling na your students are very capable of identifying ideas, say if you have 20 students who give you, a total of 20 ideas, how do you pick like that one idea that your class is going to work on? So yun po yung tuturo ko sa inyo. How you can systematically generate, screen, and prioritize ideas. And that's what we call the brainstorming process. Okay, so not to hold you guys like for much longer, I'm gonna transfer the floor over to JP. All right, JP, take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Kuya Jeff. And good morning po sa lahat. I think we are joined by students from all over the country. We have people from up north, Apayao, and ito pong Tayug National High School. I think buong klase po silang nandito. And also RTPM. I think Tayug National High School in Pangasinan, just correct me if I'm wrong. And also RTPM Dumaguete.
And we have a total of 530 live participants right now. So it's a very good attendance. So maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat po and good morning. So as Doc Jeffrey mentioned, I'm gonna begin the discussion for today by tackling the different types of research projects. And yep. So, ika-classify lang po natin yung research according to different classifications, okay? Because the scientific research is very broad and you can classify a research into many categories. But ito lang po yung three categories that we are most, I think, the most practical and the most useful. So research can be classified on the basis of application, objectives, or the research goal, and also according to the data gathered. So ito yung blueprint nung talk ko this morning. So in terms of applications, of application, you have pure research and apply research, pure or basic research. And according to objectives, you have exploratory, descriptive, correlational, explanatory research. And according to the type of data that is being gathered, you have qualitative research and quantitative research. And I will highlight each category now. So on the basis of application, you have pure and applied research. So pure research or basic research is carried out to expand knowledge about a certain topic. So ito po yung realm ng mga physicists, synthetic chemists who carry out a research project uh, to expand the field of the field of study in that area, and it's always, well, most of the time driven by curiosity or the natural progression of the research field, and there is no immediate practical application, but people just carry this out to broaden the lay of the land. So uh, while on the other hand, applied research is carried out to solve a real world problem or a practical problem, and it's very directed towards that specific application. And most of the times, this is driven by commercial or industrial objectives. So most of the time, companies would approach universities uh, to ask or seek help about some operational issues or some problems that they are encountering in the company, and then the university, at least here in Finland, would offer like research services to or partner up with that company to really figure out what's going on. So basically, ito po yung two main naririnig na po natin to before, yung pure versus applied research. And if I can just give you like a concrete example is the development of vaccine for COVID-19. So for so long a time, like molecular biologists and biotechnologists or biochemists are working to like really figure out the libraries for um, RNA sequences. So parang through time nag-accumulate yung knowledge about RNA sequences, RNA which sequences would result into or will transcribe into certain protein. So ayun, nakabangko na yon as a pure research. And here comes this new virus, this COVID-19 virus, and people are could actually develop the vaccine faster because the data is there, the research is there. So parang naging madali na lang yung pag-develop nung COVID-19, which is you have the virus and you have to research on it. So that would be applied research now, taking the data or the knowledge that you acquired from pure research. So this pure and applied research go hand in hand all the time, and no type or classification is above the other. So whether you're in pure research or applied research, these are all very useful um, research types, and yun po yung nagpo-propel ng development sa science. Okay? Next slide. So According to the uh, objective research goals, uh, different research can be categorized into exploratory, descriptive, correlational, or explanatory. So I will begin now with exploratory research. And this intends to explore the research question looking at, uh, by framing the research question and identify the important aspects of that research problem. So it doesn't offer a conclusive solution to the research problem, but it merely wants to map out the most important or the glaring aspects of the research, and it's usually conducted to uh, to define uh, a certain problem or a new problem that hasn't been studied yet. Okay, so most of the time, yung exploratory research po would take an existing theory and apply it to this new problem, or if it's totally new, we can deduct the theory from the problem. So exploratory research is a very important and a very basic type of research. Wala po tayo ditong sinusolve na problem, but we're just looking at the research question closer para po makita yung important aspects. So data collection is often in the form of unstructured survey and interviews, because exploratory research is most often used in psychology or market research or in education para po uh, makita yung different angles of the problem. Okay? Next one is the descriptive research, and this often builds on the exploratory research. I'm sorry, this is a typo. This because when you have exploratory research, we have the data gathered from exploratory research. It can point out to the most important aspects. So parang uh, the exploratory research would tell you to look at this part, this aspect, and this aspect. And yun po yung magiging focus nung descriptive research nyo, which is like a step further in the progression. And this is used to describe the characteristics of a population to look at it more closer, and the phenomenon being studied. So the research methods include surveys, case studies, observations, and measurements. So parang if you're studying the different biodiversities, so you can look at a certain plant species, and you can collect data on that on different in different settings and compare that. So ang main tool po for descriptive research is descriptive statistics, o yung very familiar po tayo about, like the mean, the standard deviation, because this will give you like the quantitative data, or it will describe your quantitative data. And yun nga po, parang this descriptive statistics would be the workhorse for presenting your data. Okay. The next one is the correlational research, and this is a step further from descriptive research, because now you are trying to recognize patterns between your variables or yung factors mo, and this can provide an evidence, but not directly like claiming a causality, but it will provide some evidence of that or lack thereof among the variables. And you can collect first-hand or archival data here. So basically, this is first-hand is primary research. Archival data is secondary research, because you're already like taking data from previous studies. And we also make use of statistical tools to analyze your data here, like the correlation coefficients and regression analysis para po to analyze and present your data in a sensible or logical fashion. Next slide. And explanatory research now would be the highest order research, where you identify the extent and nature of the cause and effects relationship. So ito pong explanatory research would be yung very familiar sa atin, which is the experimental research. Because here, you make a very ordered experiments and try to control all the factors of the experiment to uh, prove or disprove a certain cause and effect relationship. Okay, and data collection is in the form of experiments, as I've mentioned, and the essential features of this experimental research is that there is a cause and it must precede the effect. Hindi yung parang may observation na pero wala ka pang uh, ina-apply na factor or variable. So X na yon. So dapat the cause will always precede the effect, and the variation of the variable must be systematic or um, very much controlled at the very least. Kasi we're trying to get rid of this interfering variables, or what I've mentioned in course number 3, this confounding variables na when you're trying to apply a certain variable or a factor, you must make sure that yung let's say you're trying to um, study the effect of temperature on the reaction. So temperature lang yung tinitingnan natin. So wala nang ibang factors like pressure na pwedeng makaapekto doon sa resulta mo. So you must at least make sure that yung variable na lang na yon ang present and uh, nakakaapekto or that can affect the system. Okay? So the next slide is like a diagram of this progression. So we have the exploratory research at the very bottom because it gives the lay of the land, if you will. And from the exploratory research, you can try to look at a certain important aspect and derive a descriptive research on that aspect. And the next step would be the correlational research, where you now try to like deduce a certain correlation or relationship between your variables. And the peak uh, the peak here would be the explanatory research, where you now try to experiment on the cause and effect relationship of your variables. So ito yung experimental research that we are all very familiar of. And I would just like to point out here na ito pong lahat ng research na to, nilagay ko lang po siya as like this progression. But you can always pick one of this depending on your circumstances or capabilities. But for high school students or college students, I think exploratory research would be a good place to start because ito po yung pinaka-madali, because it's just all about data gathering and trying to like explore the research question and not trying to prove anything. Kasi yung highest order research, which is explanatory research, is like the realm of like experts and not merely experts, but siya yung pinakamahirap. Kasi when you're trying to do experiments, kailangan very controlled yung environment conditions. And right now, hindi po natin magagawa yun because we don't have much access to the lab. And so, descriptive, exploratory research would be like a good place to go. Okay. Next is the types of research based on the data being gathered. And we have here like the two main uh, types, which is qualitative and quantitative research. So qualitative research is very much used in the humanities or in sociology, and it gathers data in textual forms because uh, yung mga data po is gathered through personal interviews. Okay? And this explores ideas or formulates a hypothesis or a theory out of it. Okay? While on the other hand, quantitative research is the research where you obtain data and express it in terms of numbers and illustrate your data in graphs or in tables. And the main difference between qualitative research and quantitative research is that quantitative research is often used to test theory and hypotheses. And you can tell that a research would be qualitative or quantitative depending on the treatment. So if you're trying to explore or develop a theory, that's in the realm of qualitative research. When While on the other hand, if you're trying to like test that theory or hypothesis, then now you will now um, move towards quantitative research. But right now, meron din pong tinatawag na mixed method research, which combines like the essential features of qualitative and quantitative research into solving a specific research question. But that's uh, basically just a combination of these two. Okay. So here is like a side by side comparison of qualitative and quantitative research. So in terms of the focus, uh, the qualitative research focuses on the quality and meaning of the experience because you're actually talking to your respondents and you're taking note of the different qualities of that phenomenon uh, from the eyes of your interviewee or your subject. While on the other hand, quantitative research is um, deals with quantity, frequency, kung how often, and the magnitude of the data. Okay. And in terms of the research goals, qualitative research is often used to understand, describe, and discover this specific phenomenon or this research question that you are asking. While quantitative research would oftentimes test, control, and correlate your variables. And in terms of research design, uh, qualitative research is flexible, evolving, and emergent. Kasi when you're doing like one-to-one interviews or ethnographic studies, merong mga questions that arise from those interviews that you can like explore on the spot. So very flexible yung research design. And I'm not very familiar with this, but ganito po yung nature niya. While in quantitative research, the research design would be very controlled, very structured, and predetermined. So hindi tayo pwedeng mag-deviate from the experimental design. Ayun. Now in terms of data collection, uh, sa qualitative research po, the researcher is the instrument. So all the data is personally gathered by the researcher, and this often would just involve yung data na kayang i-handle nung researcher. It depends on his capabilities and capacities. And while on the other hand, the quantitative research makes use of instruments, tests, and surveys to collect data in the form of numbers or numerical figures. Okay? So, ito po yung iiwan ko na slide sa inyo to just try to appreciate the different types of research. And I would just like to say na importante po na ma-appreciate natin na yung research po is hindi lang yung experimental research na kasi pag sinabing okay, may research project siya so mag-e-experiment yan. So hindi po palagi na yun lang yung type ng research to go to. Kasi meron din pong exploratory research, descriptive, correlation research na uh, pwede nating i-explore depending on our situation kasi ngayon nga po parang very limited tayo in terms of experiments and laboratory access. So mamaya Marty will provide specific samples of these exploratory researches na pwede nating gawin sa bahay or sa community natin. And yeah, so I hope this lays the ground for Marty's talk, and I think he's ready.
Yep. And one more thing, no?
Yep.
So, bali ito pong talk ni Marty. He will talk about like specific topics na pwede po talagang i-explore ng mga estudyante, kasama ng mga guro ngayong mga panahon ng pandemya. So, napaka-diverse po ng examples na ibibigay niya. And what we encourage you to do is take note of the things that JP had talked about po. And then, dun sa kada idea na ilalatag po sa inyo ni Marty, try to visualize what type of research would that be, depending on, again, the application, depending on the objective and the type of data that you will generate. So actually, like what Marty will talk about are specific ideas, and then he will also comment about the types of data and essentially good outcomes that can come out of of those initiatives. So ito po yung gusto po sana naming ilatag ninyo as we move on to the later parts of the discussion. And then hopefully po pagdating dun sa dulo, kapag na ginanahan na kayo sa pag-generate ng idea, ituturo naman po namin sa inyo how you can prioritize these types of ideas. Okay, Marty.
All right, take it away, Marty.
Can you see my screen po?
Yes.
Ayan, wait lang. I-ayos ko lang. Alright, so thank you Kuya JP for yung introduction to research. So sinabi nga po ni Kuya Jeff kanina, we laid the foundation for the technical definitions of this research para ma-identify nyo po kung ano po yung mga research na pwede nyong i-pursue at home. So, so what are the research that you can actually pursue at home? So hindi naman po ibig sabihin nito na mag-experiment po kayo sa bahay. So ang ibig ko lang pong sabihin dito, while you are in your house or in your home, pwede po kayong makagawa ng research. Hindi naman po kasi laging research is all about doing experiments na kunwari maglalab ka or gagawa ka ng specific task. So ano po ba yung mga research that you can pursue at home? Ito po yung topic na gusto naming ibigay sa inyo. So paano nga ba ito nagsimula? So I started talking about high school community-based research last September. And ito po yung ideation process na unang course offering ng Filipino Science Hub Research University. So from here, actually ang mga present ko po dito ay kung paano mag-ideate ng prospective problems na pwedeng po natin gawin for research. But at that time, nag-focus po kami dun sa nag-focus po ako sa community-based research at dun sa mga research na nagkaroon ng impact sa community at nagkaroon ng awards and recognitions. And most of the questions that we had before ay kung paano ba magre-research at the time of the pandemic. So, hindi namin yung nasagot before because of course, we focused more on the ideation process. But now, we will be going to the, because we heard you and because malakas kayo sa Filipino Science Hub, we are now offering this kind of topic. We are now offering this kind of topic for
pa lang
you.
yung meaning, yung iba't ibang...
Ayan, sorry po. Ayan, so we are offering now this kind of topic to you. So, this is just parang patunay na naririnig po namin lahat ng suggestions nyo and comments nyo and nakakatulong po yan para mag-improve din kami as a platform. So, so what are the possible topics? So hihimay-himayin ko po from here kung ano yung mga possible topics, but hindi po limited dito yung mga topics na pwede nyong gawin at home. Ito lang po yung mga examples na feeling ko maraming applications and practical to do at home. Pero marami pa pong iba. Actually, magbabanggit din ako ng iba at the end of my talk na hindi ko po madidiscuss dito. Pero these are some of the topics na pwede nyo actually, pwede kayo magkaroon ng research while at home. So, sisimulan ko na po sa practical agricultural research. Since I'm from the agricultural sector, ito po yung isang no-oversee natin or hindi po masyadong napapansin yung mga agricultural research. Kasi minsan medyo fixated tayo sa mga kunwari isolation of active compounds, etc. etc. Pero ano ba yung mga practical agricultural research na pwede nyong gawin habang nasa bahay kayo? So, ang isa sa mga topics na pwede nyong gamitin actually is magbago-bago kayo ng soil type sa pagtatanim. So ito yung example ng experimental design na pwede nyong gamitin. So meron kayong specific plant. Bahala na kayo mamili kung anong plant ang gusto nyo. And then you subject it to different soil types. Meron akong nilagay dyan, pwedeng loam, sand, silt, garden soil, or pwede rin kayong mag-venture sa soilless media. So walang soil, pero ito yung tinatawag natin ng mga hydroponics. So, pwede kayong magpatanim dyan. Tapos tingnan nyo kung alin dyan yung makakapag-produce ng mas marami or mas magandang halaman. So, halimbawa, tomato ang ating sample, alin dyan ang mas makakapag-produce ng maraming tomato fruits? Or alin dyan ang mas makakapag-produce ng magagandang halaman and magagandang fruits? Kasi minsan, nakakapag-fruit naman siya pero pangit yung fruits. Hindi siya masyadong, kumbaga, yung eating quality niya hindi masyadong maganda. So ano ba dito? Alin ba dito? Pero ang suggestion ko sa inyo, since kapag kasi nag-use kayo ng isang type lang, kunwari purely loam, purely sand, and purely silt, medyo boring yung magiging experiment nyo kasi parang medyo suggestive na loam talaga yung mananalo. Ang suggestion ko is paghalu-haluin nyo. So pwedeng gawin yung mixture. Kunwari, 50% loam, 50% sand, or 25% sand, 25% silt, tapos 50% loam. Pwedeng mga treatments yung gamitin nyo to produce yung outcome na gusto nyong makuha, which is an ideal soil type for that specific plant. So isa yun sa mga possible na magandang outcome from your research. Ano ba ang soil type na maganda para sa isang halaman para siya ay mamunga ng maganda at magkaroon ng magandang physiological features yung halaman? Yes, Jeff.
Ang maganda din dyan, Marty, ito po, suggestion na pwede namin mabigay sa mga nanonood po. If this is the type of research that you would perform po as a team or kung sa klase, so maganda halimbawa, kung teacher po kayo, meron kayong 30 students, if you actually want your class to work on the identification of the ideal set of conditions po. For example, yung sinasabi nga ni Marty, the types of soils that would be most suitable, that would actually that would favor the growth of a particular plant. Ito po yung parang group research na pwede nyong gawin. So pwede po kayo mag-assign ng iba't ibang treatment group sa iba't ibang mga estudyante. And then aside from that, what Marty was saying was that kailangan you have to hindi po porke nasa bahay kayo ibig sabihin mapapa na ang quality ng research na gagawin niyo. Na sinabi nga ni Marty, 3 klase lang ng soil ang gagamitin niyo. Obvious naman na loam soil yung magiging pinakamaganda ang outcome. Sabi niya mag po kayo ng variation pag halu-haluin niyo. So aside po dun sa makakapag-identify kayo nung mixtures na magfe-favor ng growth ng halaman. Ang contribution po nito sa science is that tayo po kasi sa kahit saan man pong lugar sa mundo, iba-iba po yung klase ng lupa natin, no? Posible pong loam soil, posibleng sandy, posibleng magkahalo. So, ang magagawa niyo po dito is a database of result. For example, kung 80% na parang loam yung composition and then the rest is actually sandy, anong parte ng Pilipinas ang ganong klase ng lupa? Paano mag-grow ang mga kamatis doon? So wag niyo pong isipin na ang data na ma-generate ninyo ay para lang po maka-generate kayo ng paper. Kapag po systematic yung pagkakadesign nyo ng mga gantong experiments, asahin po ninyo meron tong value even to the greater scientific community.
Yes. And actually, tama si Kuya Jeff, no? If yung mga mixtures of different types of soils, hanapin nyo siya kung saan siya sa Pilipinas. Ibig sabihin, dun yung ideal itanim yung halaman na yon. So, yun yung isang, actually, magandang picture yon to see. Kasi minsan, akala natin medyo maliit na bagay lang tong paghahanap ng mixture of soil na pwede natin gamitin. Pero if you look forward, maganda yung effect nito sa ating utilization of land. Kasi 'di ba konti na lang ang agricultural land sa Pilipinas. So, kung ma-utilize natin 'yun ng maganda at hindi tayo magfo-focus like say for example sa rice lang, kasi 'yun yung problema ng Pilipinas ngayon we are more focused tayo lagi sa rice kasi nga hindi tayo self-sufficient. Pero kung mas na efficiently natin nagagamit yung iba't ibang soil sa Pilipinas with different plants na suitable sa kanya, mas maganda sana yung productivity ng land ng Pilipinas and of course efficient use.
And makakatulong po kayo sa mga magsasaka. Baka po meron tayong mga magsasaka na hindi nakapag-aral, hindi masyadong naiintindihan po ang epekto ng iba't ibang klase ng lupa sa pananim. Kung makakabuo po kayo ng ganitong database, you can make recommendations po. So, even at the high school level, hindi po sobrang komplikado yung pag-aaral na gagawin nyo kahit nasa bahay kayo. So, may value po ito. Ito po yung sinasabi namin lagi. Doon pa po sa first ideation exercise namin tatlo nila Marty, which you can watch, which is it's uploaded on our YouTube channel. Kailangan po yung research na gagawin nyo, you're not doing it just for the heck of doing research. Kailangan po merong impact. Yun po yung merong relevance to a community at the very least. Yun po yung mahalaga nating i-consider when we are coming up with ideas. Alright, Marty?
Yes. That's correct, Kuya Jeff. So, yun po, nakikita nyo na yung greater picture. Kasi minsan, pag sinabi natin ganito, parang simple lang sa inyo. Pero if you will look at the greater picture of it, marami po kayong matutulungan. And maganda po yung magiging epekto nito, lalo na sa agricultural sector ng ating bansa. And then the next one, syempre, nag-iiba-iba tayo ng soil type. Pwede rin tayo magbigay ng different fertilization sa isang halaman. So, kunwari may isang type of halaman ka, tomato ulit yung aking example, pwede mo siyang i-subject to organic fertilization, inorganic fertilization, vermicomposting, or other types of fertilization na merong available sa market. Kasi meron na ngayon na readily available na fertilizers sa market. So, again, medyo boring kung single fertilization lang yung gamitin nyo, pwedeng gamitin nyo rin yung combination to augment. So, ang gagawin nyo dito, isang soil type lang yung gagamitin nyo. Siguro topsoil lang. Yung nasa topsoil lang ng pwede natin hukayin dyan sa mga bahay-bahay natin. Tapos, i-fertilize nyo. Tingnan nyo yung magiging result ng pure topsoil dun sa fertilized topsoil. Tapos, yung fertilization nyo, pwedeng iba't ibang treatments. Pwedeng organic, inorganic, vermi, mixed, etc. Tapos, of course, hahanap ulit kayo ng pinakamagandang plant na mapoproduce nyo from that fertilization process. Again, this has a good impact on sa farmers natin and to the efficient use of fertilizers kasi minsan NPK tayo ng NPK pero hindi na pala yun yung kailangan ng halaman natin. Ang kailangan nila ibang minerals kunwari na mahahanap mo sa inorganic or organic fertilizer. So we must be able to suggest the optimized fertilization process on a specific plant para mas maganda yung growth niya and of course yung yield at the end of your planting season. So yield and growth yung tinitingnan natin kasi minsan sinabi ko kanina maganda yung yield pero pangit yung eating quality. So tingnan natin din yun. So ito rin katulad ng sinabi ni Kuya Jeff, mukhang simple pero malaki yung impact, especially sa farmers natin na hindi knowledgeable about fertilization processes. Okay? Next one. So ito puro agriculture to kasi talagang inclined nga ako sa agriculture. Use of different kinds of varieties. So ito, pinakita ko lang dito na meron tayong iba't ibang varieties. Hindi porket sinabi mong corn, yellow lang yung corn or white lang yung corn. Meron tayong mga black, meron din tayong red, meron ding orange. Pero halimbawa, white corn, meron ding iba't ibang varieties ng white corn. Merong white corn na lagkitan or yung malagkit at meron ding white corn na matigas. So iba't ibang variety yun ng corn. So pwede natin siyang tingnan kung in a different variety. Kunwari, meron tayong tatlong seeds. Yellow corn, red corn, at saka white corn. Isinubject natin sila sa same cultural management. Ang ibig sabihin ng same cultural management, same soil type, same fertilization, same watering kung nagwa-water sila, and kung nagwa-water kayo. And basta lahat ng agricultural practices ay the same. And then, after subjecting it to same cultural management, makikita nyo yung yield. So, alin yung pinakamataas yung yield? Okay? Alin yung pinakamataas ng yield dun sa tatlong varieties na tinest nyo? So, ito actually are site-specific. So, ibig sabihin, kumbaga, ang isang result ay hindi true para sa kabilang result. Kunwari, ang result namin sa Region 1, yellow yung pinakamarami, pinakamaganda yung yield. Pero ang result namin sa Region 2, red yung pinakamataas yung yield. So, bakit? Pwedeng sa elevation, pwedeng sa weather, pwedeng sa soil type doon sa inyong region, etc. etc. So, pwede tong region specific or town specific actually. Yes, Kuya Jeff.
Ito maganda kasi dito, for example, no, yung sinabi po ni Marty, simple yung research, no? But your regionality could actually be something that could bring about new findings na typically hindi po natin nagagawa. Actually, yung pwedeng maganda po natin gawin dito, for example, no, through PhilSci Hub, if there are schools from different regions who are willing to participate in an activity na, okay, isang halaman po, isasabay natin all at the same period, na galing may representation sa Region 1, Region 2, ganyan. Pwede po natin yan, i-pull together natin yung data, tapos gagawan po natin ng mapa. And then yun po, that's a form of collaboration among high school research groups din po. So ito po, sabi yun po yung i-reiterate ko po, and I apologize if we may sound like a broken record. Don't dismiss these types of research as though, they're too simple that they won't make an impact. No. Every research that you actually perform, no matter how simple it may seem, for as long as the project is designed really well, executed, carefully, and the data are actually processed properly, we can come up with fairly influential bodies of knowledge. So yun po yung gusto namin i-encourage kayo. So don't get disheartened if you cannot access the lab right now. There are some very relevant types of research that you can perform that could make an impact to the greater Philippines po.
Just a reminder lang po din, Kuya Jeff, na itong mga experiments na to, pwedeng potted experiments lang. So pwedeng sa paso lang or sa maliit na land area. Pwede nyo tong gawing experiment na to. So hindi talaga kayo kailangang lumabas ng bahay, pwedeng sa bakuran nyo lang or somewhere free space na malapit sa inyo. Basta makabili kayo ng magandang soil. So again, this also has an impact in the community kasi masasuggestan nyo ng variety yung region nyo. Sasabihin nyo, yung corn po ang magandang variety para sa ating region. Kasi nung sinubject po namin tong tatlong variety, yung yellow corn, yun yung pinakamataas ang yield. Yung white corn, yun yung pinakamababa ang yield. So for efficient land use, mas maganda po na itanim natin ay yellow corn. So again, impact in your community. We always emphasize that your research must have an impact on your community. Ito nga lang, localize yung impact mo within your region. Pero hindi na dinidiscredit ng fact na may impact pa rin yung iyong study.
Saka yun, isipin nyo, para magtatanim lang po kayo sa paso ng halaman. Uso ngayon yung mga plantitos tsaka plantita. Ito po, lalapatan nyo ng science.
Yes. Yes. Alright, so let's move on to the next topic. So ito naman po, climate adaptation. So meron tayong tinatawag na drought and waterlogging. So yung drought, ibig sabihin, isa-subject nyo siya na hindi nyo iwa-water yung plant nyo. Tapos yung waterlogging naman po, sobra yung pagwa-water. Ibig sabihin, parang babahain nyo yung halaman nyo. Meron po tayong mga literature on how to carry out drought experiments and waterlogging experiments. Hindi ko na po yun i-discuss dito. It's up to you to para kalkalin yung literature kung paano i-carry out yun. Pero ito po, dalawa po ito sa pinakamahalagang experiments ngayon because of the climate change. So meron ka kunwaring 3 varieties, sinubject mo lahat sila sa drought. After recovery, kasi sa drought experiments, may recovery period yan eh. Merong time na iwa-water mo na sila. After recovery, alin yung nabuhay? Alin yung nakapag-produce ng maraming yield? Isa yun sa magandang recommendation mo for a variety na, kunwari, at the end of your experiment, ang nabuhay lang yung red after subjecting it to drought. Masasabi mo na drought tolerant ang red kung corn na ito. Kasi after subjecting it to drought and recovery ng water, tumubo pa rin siya and nagkaroon ng magandang yield. So again, this is a very impactful research kasi makakapag-suggest kayo in times of El Nino. Anong pwede kong itanim sa time ng El Nino? Matagal ang drought. So pwede niyong sabihin, yung red corn kasi na-try na namin yan sa experiment namin kahit sinubject namin sa drought, tumubo pa rin siya after recovery. And meron din tayong tinatawag na waterlogging. Ito naman, kapag ka binaha mo siya or patuloy yung tubig na source mo, kahit labis-labis na yung tubig, alin yung tumubo? Alin yung tumubo within these 3 varieties? So, pwede mo yung makita doon sa experiment mo. Yun namang mapipili mo doon sa waterlogging, pwede mo tong i-recommend kapag time ng La Nina kasi laging baha. So, may waterlogging definitely. So, alin dito sa mga varieties na to ang makaka-adapt sa climate? Isang magandang research yan at magandang recommendation para sa mga farmers natin, especially sa mga localities nyo, sa regions nyo. So, halimbawa, Region 2, sobrang init. Pwede kayong kumuha ng drought-tolerant na halaman dyan at yan yung itanim nyo para hindi mamamatay yung halaman nyo kapag dumating na yung ganitong season na March, April, May. So, yun. Maganda ang impact, maganda ang study, meron scientific siya, and also yung impact na yung data na ma-generate nyo will have a great impact in your community. So next, ito naman ang tanong, what plants should I study? Kasi ang aking nilagay diyan ay corn and tomato, and alam naman nating lahat na yung corn and tomato, well-studied na yan. So, halimbawa sa drought and waterlogging, well-studied na yung tomato and corn. And also, yun sa mga different fertilization techniques. And well-studied na yan. So, ano ba ang in ngayon? Yun yung gusto kong sabihin. So, anong pwede nyong pag-aralan? Ito ang mga pwede nyong pag-aralan. Dahil sobrang sikat ngayon sa mga plantitos at plantitas itong mga ornamental plants, pwede ito ang pag-eksperimentuhan nyo dahil wala pang masyadong data about these plants. So, pwede kayong mag-experiment sa mayana. Ito yung mayana sinasabi nila. Ito yung mga alocasia, monstera, ito aglonema if I'm not mistaken, and yung calathea to. So, yan, different plants for plantitos and plantitas. Pwede nyong pag-eksperimentuhan. Medyo mahal nga lang, pero kung marami naman kayo sa group, pwede nyo tong i-investan. And the body of knowledge that you will generate from this, pwede nyo actually i-publish. Kasi nga, wala pa masyadong nag-aaral nito eh. If you want to pursue these types of topics, you can actually contact the Filipino Science Hub because we're also interested in these types of research. We can actually guide you kung paano yung research design on this ornamental plant. So, wala pa masyadong studies on the cultural management. Merong mga cultural management pero these are parang confined lang dun sa mga talagang nag-aalaga ng halaman pero walang scientific basis. And also, itong mga gagawin natin ditong cultural management techniques are based on science. So, ano ba yung mga dapat nating gawin? Ano ba dapat yung nating ilagay? Ano ba Kasi karamihan ng bumibili, ang nalulungkot ako, minsan nakikita ko bumibili sila ng plants tapos namamatay lang. Marami yung namamatayan. Sayang naman yung perang ininvest nyo kung mamamatay lang din yung halaman nyo. So, pag-aralan natin.
And I think like yung sabi mo nga, uso ngayon yung mga plantitos at plantita, no? Yung simple lang na difference if you put it indoors or ilagay mo lang dun sa labas ng bahay mo. Ano ba yung impact nun sa mga gantong halaman? So those types of effects of specific factors, we can quantify them, no? And if we can pull them together, we can really come up with a database na pwedeng gawin ng guide. Para sabi nga po ni Marty, hindi nasasayang yung mga halaman.
Yes, tama po yan. So, mag-build po tayo ng isang magandang cultural management for these types of ornamentals. Fertilization, soil type, watering, yung timing ng watering, etc., etc. Tsaka po yung, kunwari nga po yun, sun effect of sunlight. Ilang oras lang ba dapat siya paarawan? Ilang oras siya dapat nasa indoor? Or other types of research. You can actually contact us kung gusto niyo ng guide kung paano natin to i-carry out tong research na to. So the next topic is biodiversity. So medyo nakakalimutan actually itong topic na ito. And this is also a very important parameter para makita po natin kung healthy pa ba yung environment natin. Dapat diverse. So biodiversity studies are often neglected kasi ano lang to survey lang actually. So ano ba ang mga pwede nating research topics on biodiversity? So again, you focus on your community. Meron ba sa community nyo na lakes? Meron ba sa community nyo na rivers? Or meron ba sa community nyo na forest? Kasi pwede nyo siyang gawa ng biodiversity studies. Like say for example, sa lakes, anong pwede nating biodiversity study dyan? Siguro kailangan kumontrata kayo dito ng isang mangingisda. Tapos yung mangingisda na yun, either kukuhanan niyo siya ng data weekly or pwede ring everyday. Depende sa kung anong gusto niyong data na ma-generate. So kung weekly, kung ilang months niyo siyang kukuhanan ng data. So dun sa mahuhuli niya, ang papagawa niyo lang dun sa mangingisda is pipicturean lang niya kung ano yung nahuli ng lambat niya. And then makikita mo doon kung diverse pa ba yung ecosystem ng lake mo. Kasi say for example, nakahuli siya ng 90% tilapia tapos kunwari, 9 na tilapia, isang kanduli. So parang dominated na ng tilapia yung lake mo. Ibig sabihin, yung species ng tilapia doon ay medyo invasive na hindi na maganda sa ecosystem kasi nagiging monoculture na yung lake mo. Hindi natin yung gustong mangyari sa mga lakes. Gusto natin merong competition, merong biodiversity para maganda yung ecosystem within your lake. So, yes, Kuya Jeff.
And then, ito tip po para sa mga teachers, no? Kasi yung mga estudyante kasi they come and go. Dadaan sila ng 1 year, posibleng lumipat ng school, and then di ba po? Pero if you're after continuity, for example, sabi nga po ni Marty, yung surveyed biodiversity surveys, for example, pwede po ninyo i-monitor yung changes sa biodiversity ng isang lake sa inyong area over the next 10 years. And then, after 10 years po, i-gather ninyo yung data. Ano ba yung pagbabago? Nagbago ba yung biodiversity? Meron bang pagbabago sa locality ninyo or sa community that could have induced that change in the biodiversity? Yung mga ganun pong klase ng data and learning from research, hindi po yan trivial. Kasi yan pong mga bagay na yan, it actually, like those will comprise a body of knowledge that will have impact. You can actually make recommendations to the same community, to a similar community that's undergoing a similar change na, nung ganyan yung nangyari sa amin, nagbago yung paligid namin, nagtayo ng maraming subdivisions, nagtayo ng mga gantong companies. Ito yung nangyaring pagbabago dun sa biodiversity ng community namin. So, ito yung mga bagay na kailangan yung alagaan. So, if ever na i-adapt nyo yung kaparehas na community changes, then baka meron tayong mga preventive measures na magawa para maalagaan yung mga organisms sa community. So, gaya nga po na sinabi ni Marty, itong mga gatong klase ng studies pwedeng gawin at the high school level. At the stewards of these are actually teachers. Sabi ko nga po, kayo yung pwedeng mag-continue, yung continuity ng research na to. Mga teachers po talaga yung may hawak ng responsibilidad.
Yes,
And
tama. So,
Kuya Jeff, I would just like to add also yung parang an interesting point na ni-raise ni Marty is to yun nga parang kunyari kung you will talk to fishermen, maganda yung notion na ini-involve natin yung community dun sa research just to make it a really community-based
Yeah.
research. At
And
yung benefits would really for the community, di ba?
gaya kanina, no, nung soil types and identifying the optimal set of conditions para mas mapalaki natin yung halaman or ma-identify natin kung ano ba yung variety ng halaman na dapat itanim sa isang lugar na bagay sa lupa and all other factors. Ganun rin po yung sinasabi ni JP. If you involve your community, yung mga mangingisda po na halimbawa hihingan nyo ng picture or magpapatulong kayo sa survey, ay di mahahanapan din po nila yan ng pattern. So alam na rin po nila what to expect. Diba, on certain needs. Kasi minsan po yung mga nangingisda sa atin, posibleng nagiging hobby lang yan na hindi siya sustain for a very long time. And I bet po, for quite a while now na medyo umuunlad na po yung buhay sa Pilipinas. For example po, sa probinsya namin sa Batangas, mas kumukonti na po yung mga tao na nangingisda. So yung continuity po ng knowledge ng mga naunang mangingisda sa atin, baka po hindi na siya napapasa. Pero this could be something na ma-establish nyo as a body of knowledge. Paano ba nagbabago ang marine biodiversity over time? May kinalaman ba yun? So sa iba't ibang pagbabago ng lugar gaya na sinabi namin. So involve your community.
yes, that is correct. So, kung sisimulan po ito ng isang teacher ngayon, next year or within the 10 years, pwedeng yung mga susunod na classes magkakaroon na sila ng reference point dun sa first year. So, and then pwede nyo itong maging topic for the next 10 years of your teaching to see if there are changes in biodiversity. So, same is true with rivers. Pwede rin po kayong kumuha ng biodiversity sa rivers. Yung streams, parang medyo maliit yung streams kaya parang hindi siya masyadong advisable. Tsaka kukunti talaga yung nabubuhay na species sa streams. Although meron din. So, hindi lang fishes yung pwede nyong pag-eksperimentuhan even sa lakes. Pwede rin mga shrimps, crabs, etc. Kung gusto nyong isama yun sa experimental design nyo, why not? Pwede po yun. So, hindi lang tayo limited sa fishes, pwede rin yung other marine organisms. And then lastly, yung forest po. Kung may malapit kayo sa forest or taga-bundok kayo, pwede kayong mag-survey ng isang portion ng forest. Just make sure na naka-Google Map or kung marunong kayong gumamit ng GIS, pwede nyong imapa sa GIS yung sinurvey nyo na land. Now, ano po yung mga pwede nating isurvey sa forest? Unang-una, yung mga trees, kung anong mga trees ang present dun sa sinurvey nyo na land. Hindi naman po kailangan sobrang laki na land yung isurvey. Siguro mga 100 square meters or 200 square meters will be enough for high school or college students. Tapos, tingnan nyo kung diverse ba, puro nara ba, puro kamagong ba, or halo-halo ba ng mga puno ng mahogany, nara, etc. Pwede po nyo yung isang output of your research from that biodiversity study. Tapos pwede rin po kayong mag-provide ng explanation. Bakit kaya puro nara ang tumutubo dito? Inintroduce ba ang nara dito before? O nagkaroon ba ng tree planting ng nara dito? Or whatever? Or talagang dito talaga indigenous talaga yung nara dito before the history, yung mga history books ng community nyo, nakalagay talaga na itong bundok na to kilala for nara. So pwede nyo po siyang lagyan ng kwento in a historical basis yung biodiversity po sa forest nyo. Also, kung ayaw nyo ng puno, pwede ring mga halaman. So yung mga nasa baba, yung mga maliliit na halaman, pwede rin nyo rin po yung isurvey kung ayaw nyo ng puno. Again, the only thing that you need here is a person who can go there and take pictures of the whole plot na tinitingnan nyo. Syempre, pagka-picture nila, dapat buo yung picture. And then, syempre, magbibilang na kayo dyan ng puno, magbibilang na kayo ng halaman, or kung gusto nyo, insekto, pwede nyo ring tingnan yung mga insekto na nabubuhay dun sa forest. Yes, Kuya Jeff.
Okay, so gusto ko lang din pong idagdag para ma-excite po kayo sa mga biodiversity surveys. No? For example, alam niyo po ba na maraming mga taga-ibang bansa na pumupunta sa atin sa Pilipinas para i-survey po ang ating mga dagat. So hindi ko po sinasabing yung mga teachers as estudyante mag-swimming sa dagat po. Pero gusto ko lang po ibigay yung example na marami pong foreign nationals ang nagsusurvey ng Philippine forests and oceans para po maghanap ng mga organisms na meron pong pharmaceutical compounds. So ito po yung mga anti-cancer compounds, mga gamot po sa iba't ibang sakit. So yun pong paano ba tayo makaka-discover ng mga ganyang klase ng halaman at organismo? No? So for example, gaya nga po ng sinabi ni Marty, pagpunta niyo sa forest at mag-ano po kayo, mag-picture kayo, no? Halimbawa ng isang defined area of land or that has vegetation. Kung maayos po yung resolution, no, you just have to look more closely, no. For example, sa isa pong plot ng lupa, meron mga halaman diyan na kinakain ng insekto yung dahon. At meron pong katabi yung mga halaman na hindi kinakain ng insekto. So ano po ba yung mga possible inferences na pwede nyo ma-form out of that? So baka same plot, same area, land area, pareha silang pwedeng kainan ng insekto pero itong isang to hindi siya kinahagat. Baka meron siyang bioactive compound na insect repellent. Baka meron siyang compound na ayaw ng mga insekto. So yun po, pwede nyo i-investigate yung mga ganung halaman na ito may weird property siya. So baka pwede natin tong aralin. So yun po yung isa sa mga possible takeaways from biodiversity survey. So again, titingin lang kayo sa area, magbibilang lang kayo ng species, i-observe niyo lang po yung mga halaman doon. Hindi niyo po kailangan ng mga mamahalin na lab equipment to actually come up with a fairly well-designed research project.
Yes, tama yun si Kuya Jeff. So, ang ibig sabihin lang ni Kuya Jeff, by mere observation lang sa environment natin, pwede na kayong maka-infer ng something na useful. Like yun nga, sabi niya, maka-observe lang kayo ng isang halaman na hindi dinadapuan ng insekto and then isang halaman na dinadapuan ng insekto, you can infer na pwedeng merong bioactive compounds dun sa halaman na yun. And kung gusto nyo, i-extract nyo, tas i-test nyo, i-spray nyo dun sa kabilang halaman, tingnan nyo kung pepestihin pa rin siya. So that para mapatunayan nyo yung inyong inference. So yun po, maraming studies and etong study na to hindi siya natatapos sa isang taon. So kung gusto nyo 10 taon, pwede. Kasi makikita natin yung trend sa biodiversity on that span of time na mag-devote kayo ng studies on this biodiverse areas.
Yeah. And one more thing, Martino. Next week po, actually, we have a webinar on taxonomy and mycology. So we're going to be featuring a world-class Filipina scientist po whose career is discovering po new species and families of fungi. So, and hinahanapan po nila ng clinical application. So next week po, if you're interested in biodiversity studies and taxonomy and mycology, attend din po kayo doon. Kasi doon, she will actually show you kung paano ba yung proseso ng pag-discover ng bagong species.
Alright, exciting. Actually, pwede nyo yung magawa sa biodiversity studies kasi pag pinicturean nyo tapos hindi pinakita nyo sa botanist tapos hindi nyo ma-identify, ibig sabihin baka bagong species.
Bagong discovery, pwede nyo ipangalan after yourself. And I think one more thing, her name is Dr. Connie Gibas Cañete, who's actually like an aunt figure to me when I was in Canada. That's where we met. When I talked to her about her webinar, she was actually very frustrated because she told me that there's a plethora of undiscovered fungal species in the Philippines. But you know what? Ang nakaka-discover po ng species sa sarili nating lupa ay mga taga-ibang bansa. Kasi wala talagang masyadong interest ang mga estudyante at mga guro sa area na to. So, pero hindi niyo po nakikita napakayaman po ng Pilipinas sa iba't ibang klase ng organisms na naghihintay lang po na ma-discover ninyo.
Yes, tama po 'yun. So, it's out there. It's out there. The research is out there. You just need to go there and find it. Ika nga. All right. So the next one or the next topic that I have here is app development. So ito sa mga techies, kung talagang ang field nyo gusto ay computer science or IT in the future, pwede kayong mag-try ng app development as early as high school. Pero sa college, pwede rin. Yung app development naman, meron actually na mga mga free softwares na drag and drop lang. Ibig sabihin, hindi ka magko-code ng marami. Kasi yung app development, ma-code yan eh. Ma-code. Alam natin na magko-code ka sa software para makuha mo yung certain look ng app. Pero may app development din na drag and drop lang. So parang titingnan mo, halimbawa ito, options. I-drop mo lang dun sa app mo, tapos makikita mo na yung interface, etc. etc. So, teka lang, stop share ko. Tapos, kapakitaan ko lang kayo nung parang list ng mga app na drag and drop lang na pwede kayong gumawa ng app na drag and drop lang. So, wait lang. Stop ko lang yung sharing ko. Share. Ayan, ito ay nakuha ko lang sa internet. So actually, hindi ko pa siya tinatry. Pero ito ang options na meron kayo na free. So punta lang kayo dito sa website ng ito, G2G, drag and drop app builder for free. So ayan yung mga iba't ibang software. So pwede nyo siyang i-explore. Although, syempre, kailangan i-familiarize nyo yung sarili nyo dito sa mga software na to before nyo siya gamitin. Hindi nyo siya pwedeng gamitin na bara-bara lang. So, kailangan nyo din siyang talagang pag-aralan kung paano ginagawa. And syempre, lagi naman natin ginagamit yung mga apps. So, ano ba yung importance ng mga apps? Syempre, pinapadali niya yung buhay natin. Lagi tayong may dalang cellphone. So, nakikita na ba yung screen ko, Kuya JP? Yung slide?
Yes.
Okay. So, ito talagang lagi natin ginagamit. So, hindi ko naman kayo pine-pressure na gumawa ng app na talagang like Amazon-like or Shopee-like, Lazada-like. Pero pwede kayong gumawa ng school apps. Pwede kayong mag-start sa school nyo. Ano bang possible topics for apps na pwede nyong gawin sa school? So right now, we are di ba parang online learning. Pero in the future, say for example in 2022 or in 2023, magkakaroon na yan ng blended learning. So meron ng face-to-face na siguro bihira lang, pero magkakaroon din ng face-to-face. So ang isang topic na nakikita ko is an online food court. So ito parang e-canteen in general. So magla-lodge ka lang doon ng choices from your concessionaire kung anong ibibigay nila. Tapos pwedeng 1 day before or an hour before, 2 hours before, pwede ka na mag-place ng order para pagdating mo sa canteen, naka-ready na yung pagkain mo. So pwede yon, database lang to. Gagawa ka lang ng database from your concessionaire kung ano yung mga pinagtitinda nila, and then drag and drop, click lang, tapos parang add to cart, ganyan. So kung ano, tapos pagdating mo sa canteen, wala ka na. Siyempre, dapat limited pa rin yung face-to-face interaction. So titingnan ako, may naka-ready na yung pagkain mo doon, parang nakaset na siya sa isang table. So isa itong magandang opportunity ngayon kasi pag nag-limited face-to-face na at saka may blended learning na, pwedeng magamit itong food court na type of app in your school. Also, itong e-library. So again, itong e-library, kailangan lang niya ng database. So for sure, yung librarian nyo, meron siyang listahan ng mga libro sa library nyo. So katulad lang din ng food court, pwede kayo magpa-reserve, magkaroon lang kayo ng drop down na kunwari calendar, tapos i-reserve nyo siya for a certain date, tapos kukunin nyo siya dun sa date na yon. Again, it will give the librarian yung time para i-prepare yung libro nyo para wala na rin, limited na rin yung interaction. So parang at kunwari, sa 27th ng March, hihiramin ko yung Zoomdal na libro. So yung parang wala na kayo masyadong interaction ng librarian, parang magla-login ka na lang dun sa app mo, tapos alam na ng librarian kung sino ka, kung sinong hihiram, tapos naka-prepare na lahat ng libro na hihiramin for that day. So wala na kayo masyadong interaction, di ka na magsusulat dun sa library card, etc. etc. Also, since ngayon it's pandemic, wala tayong means para makuha yung class card natin. So pwede rin kayong gumawa ng app na makaka-view ng grades niyo. So again, this is just building a database. So database na pupunuan ng mga teachers every quarter. So pwedeng magsa-sign in lang kayo, and then after signing in, you will see your grades. Pwede rin kayong maglagay ng other functions like trend. Kunwari, sa first grading to second grading, tumaas ako sa math ng 10% or ganyan. Pwede kayong mag-ano ng trend line para makita nyo yung performance nyo per subject. Pwede, ito ang mga apps na pwede nyong gawin na magkakaroon ng impact sa school nyo. Ayan. So kung techie kayo, you can go to app development. Medyo mahirap lang siya, pero kung naaral nyong mabuti yung software at maganda yung background nyo sa coding or sa yung katulad nga ng sinabi ko kanina, meron lang naman dyang drag and drop, pwede nyo tong gawin.
Ang maganda din kasi one thing that we need to point out is kasi yung 'di ba yung laptop medyo mas accessible na siya sa mga estudyante ngayon. You just need siguro internet access to be able to use those online resources that Marty actually mentioned. So ito po talaga yung mga kailangan na ito po yung mga types na research that you can actually work on kahit hindi po kayo pumapasok sa lab at wala kayong lab access. So siguro, pero gaya nga po ng sinabi natin, hindi naman kasi pwede magre-research lang tayo ng mga bagay na kaya natin gawin. There are also some barriers that you need to go over. For example po ito, so kung kailangan matuto kayo ng konting coding, marami din naman po dyan sa YouTube na meron mga tutorials rin on how to code. Those are some of the things that na pwede po ninyong gamitin para po matuto kayo ng basic coding. And then based off of that, if you're working on these as a group project, o di baka as a group learning activity, baka sabay-sabay pwedeng aralin ng mga estudyante nyo and they can train one another.
Yes, tama yun. So, it requires another level of learning kasi nga hindi naman ituturo to sa school eh. Pero kung halimbawa meron naman sa school nila na gumagawa talaga sila ng app, maganda tong practice na to. Pero naturally sa curriculum natin parang walang ganitong tinuturo. So, take the extra mile, ika nga. Ito computational, hindi lang actually siya sa chemistry, pwede ring physics, pwede ring biology. Pero magfo-focus ako sa computational chemistry kasi yun yung alam ko. So, ang computational chemistry, ang ginagawa niya from a code, it will generate a specific type of data na mas understandable natin. So, papakitaan ko kayo ng isang magandang example. So, ito ay paper ng isang estudyante from UP Diliman and yung advisor niya is si Dr. Ricky Nelias. Si Dr. Ricky Nelias is also a graduate of UPLB pero sa US siya nag-PhD and actually kasama ko siya sa organization ko sa UPLB Chemical Kinetics Society. So nagse-specialize siya sa computational chemistry. So ito yung problem dito sa paper nila. Yung rice weevil, isa siya sa pinaka important pest ng rice kasi nagre-reduce talaga siya ng yield ng rice significantly. So gusto nilang patayin yung pest na ito. And yung mga monoterpenes, meron siyang known bioactivity against insects and pests. So ang ginawa nila, humanap sila dito ng isang protein sa rice weevil na pwede nilang i-target with monoterpene such that mapapatay nila or madi-disrupt nila yung physiological and cellular response nitong rice weevil pero hindi maapektuhan ng tao and other animals. So kumuha sila ng isang enzyme kumuha sila ng isang receptor. Ang tawag sa receptor ay tyramine receptor. Ang tyramine receptor sa rice weevil ay hindi siya present sa mga vertebrates at sa humans. So meaning to say, kapag naglagay ka ng monoterpenes, ang madi-disrupt lang is the function or the receptor of your rice weevil and not not higher order animals. So ang ginawa nila using computational chemistry, tiningnan nila kung makaka-disrupt itong common monoterpenes natin dun sa enzyme na tyramine receptor from rice weevil. So ano ba yung mga common types of computational chemistry tools na pwede nating gawin? Unang-una sa lahat, yung homology modeling. Ang sinabi ko kanina, this is a tyramine receptor protein from the rice weevil at ito yung amino acid sequence niya. So ito ay readily available sa internet pero wala pa siyang crystal structure. Ibig sabihin, hindi pa well-defined yung structure ng protein. So sa homology modeling, from your amino acid sequence, mape-predict niya yung protein structure. So ito yung tawag dito, program na ginamit nila ay TASR. This is a free program. So pwede kayong gumamit nito for free for as long as you have your internet. So kung meron from the amino acid sequence, nagkaroon sila ng protein structure, which is very important, lalo na sa targeting ng molecules. Yes, Kuya Jeff?
Okay, Marty. So there's actually a question that I pinned on YouTube. It's from Gemma Mondoyo. So what she said was, what possible study can you suggest po, sir, regarding cell and molecular biology without using laboratory tools?
Ito na.
So I brought this up. So ito na po yun, Ma'am Gemma. So gaya nga po sabi ni Marty, there computational approaches po to chemistry, molecular biology, or physics. So ito po talaga, siguro Marty, ano ba yung mga basic requirements for them to be able to...
Actually, i-discuss ko yan after nung second kung ano ko lang siya, papasadahan and then sasabihin ko kung ano yung mga requirements. So, ito yung isa sa mga pwedeng gawin ng mga estudyante natin na high school. Pwede silang magkaroon ng amino acid sequence from a certain protein, which is tyramine receptor nga from rice weevil na wala pang crystal structure, and then transform it using a program, yung homology modeling, para makita mo yung actual protein structure niya, yung folding, etc., etc. In this case, pwede na nating i-dock yung mga molecules natin na monoterpenes kung saan yung mga active site dyan sa protein na yan. So, which brings me to the second type of computational chemistry, which is the molecular modeling. After ma-model natin, after natin makita yung protein structure, i-add natin isa-isa ito or i-deduct natin isa-isa itong mga compounds na ito dito sa protein structure and makukuha natin yung binding energy. So ano ba yung binding energy? Kapag sinabing binding energy, yan yung energy required para makabind doon sa protein mo. So ibig sabihin, kapag nakabind ang isa dito sa mga, or lahat sila nakabind dito sa protein, or may ability to bind to the protein, may ability sila para ma-disrupt yung receptor na yon. So ibig sabihin, maapektuhan yung insekto kapag ka nag-bind. So in general, pag mababa ang binding energy, the more negative the binding energy, yun yung mas effective na insecticide or pesticide doon sa ating rice weevil. Kasi mababa lang yung energy requirement para mag-bind yung compound na ito dito sa protein natin and therefore disrupting the protein structure. So pag na-disrupt yung protein structure, madi-disrupt din yung cellular and physiological response nung pest, which is the rice weevil. So ano ba yung requirements para makapaggawa kayo ng ganitong types of experiments? Of course, you should be adept to your organic chemistry, structures, basic structures, paano sila nagbe-behave, protein structures. Also, dapat maalam kayo talaga sa basic, kung ano man yung, kunwari ito, biochemistry kasi ito eh. So, dapat meron din kayong konting alam dun sa biochemistry. And also, dapat meron kayong training and guidance from an expert. Like say for example, yun nga sinabi ko sa inyo kanina, he's from UP Diliman, si Dr. Ricky Nelias. Actually, mag-o-open siya ng workshop for high school students for computational chemistry. I-announce namin yun sa page namin pag na-confirm ko na sa kanya. Pero sinabi niya sa akin, i-open doon niya yung computational chemistry to senior high school students. So, we will be posting that on our website as soon as possible kapag nakuha ko na yung go signal ni sir. Do you have any additions to that, Kuya Jeff?
Yun po. So siguro yung one particular aspect lang po kasi this might appear intimidating, no? And daunting kasi computational chemistry, baka akala niya po kailangan yung matutunan yung super hardcore quantum chemistry or quantum physics. So, if you're interested in research projects like this, what we encourage for you to do is to reach out to local experts po. So we do have computational experts in the Philippines po. Usually nasa major universities sila, but wag po kayong mahihiyang lumapit at mag-reach out sa kanila kasi these people are parts of institutions who have extension program. So ano po ba yung extension program? So ibig sabihin po noon, they do have outreach activities po to mentor and to help the high school sector po on how to perform and carry out research essentially. So sila din po yung pwede siguro mag-guide sa inyo. Ano ba yung mga basics na dapat niyong matutunan, paano siguro kayo i-guide kung paano gumamit ng mga software. So wag po kayong ma-intimidate tumingin sa mga non-traditional areas like this. And gaya nga po na sinabi namin sa inyo, ito po for example, computational study, Marty introduced it to you na pwede niyo po siyang gamitin for research. Marami pa po kami, meron din po kami mga webinars that can actually, training programs within Phil-Sci Hub Research University where you can also explore some chemistry and molecular biology concepts. So we do have a webinar on data science rin po happening on April 3. So that's actually going to be delivered by one of the youngest experts in data science who's currently working as a professor in St. Luke's Medical Center. So yun po, watch out for those those activities po. So puno na po ang ating Saturdays for the month of April. At ito po talaga yung mga specific areas that you can actually work on. Sa April 27 naman po, we do have a foreign speaker who's actually an American and a professor in one of the leading medical universities here in the US. He's going to be talking about cancer genome analysis. So yun po, medyo I bet meron din po itong mga computational aspects. So attend lang po kayo dun sa mga webinars namin na yun. And you can find all those, the information on how to register for those events on our website at saka po sa Facebook page namin. Okay, Marty?
Alright. So ito, yung computational chemistry, pinakita ko lang sa inyo in terms of entomology and plant diseases, plant entomology. Pero marami talagang ang tawag dito, applications ang computational chemistry. Actually, ang computational chemistry ay ginagamit sa mga pharmaceutical companies. So halimbawa, kunwari, mag-discover sila ng isang pharmaceutical drug. May target protein sila. Tapos, gagawa-gawa lang sila ng different types of molecules. Tapos, idadak nila, minsan hundreds, minsan thousands of molecules. Tapos, titingnan nila yung binding energy. So, kunwari, nag-screen sila ng 100 molecules. Titingnan nila kung alin yung magbabind dun sa protein of interest nila. Tapos, yung top 10% or top 10 hits, yun lang yung ipoproceed nila sa clinical trials or yun lang yung ipoproceed nila sa synthesis or and trials. So, nakakatipid actually ang mga practicing sa pharmaceutical companies because of computational chemistry. Kasi nagbibigay sila ng overview kung ano magiging behavior ng molecule mo when ito ay ikakabit dun sa protein of interest mo. Yes, Kuya Jeff.
And actually, dito po sa Amerika, senior high level pa lang may mga gumagawa na ng computational studies. So I would actually encourage po yung mga teachers if you can get yourself if you can just get some basic training po on computational chemistry, it wouldn't hurt po our students if kung ma-involve sila sa ganitong klase ng pag-aaral in as early as at the high school level. And siguro ito one thing then, Marty, we can also perhaps invite Kuya Ricky to deliver a training course din sa atin kasi meron ring mga college students na nagre-request on YouTube who are watching us right now. So yun po, siguro sometime in the month of May we might be able to get a workshop scheduled or sometime po later this year. So just watch out po for further announcements, but we're monitoring your messages po.
Yes. Tapos ang sabi sa akin ni Sir Ricky, yung sa high school level daw, okay na mag-stop sa molecular docking kasi hindi siya coding heavy. Ibig sabihin, same lang yung code mo, iba-iba lang yung molecules. So iraran mo lang siya sa computer. Kailangan mo lang ng mabilis na internet at saka mabilis na computer. Yun yung kailangan mo na magkaroon ka. So kailangan may internet ka kasi kung wala kang internet, hindi mo mararan yung program. Tapos kailangan mo rin ng medyo mabilis na processor kasi kapag mabagal yung processor mo, matagal din mag-run yung program.
And ito just to highlight the value of computational chemistry rin naman. Kasi before po kasi mauso to yung mga computational modeling software. Ang ginagawa po talaga ng mga scientists na kaparehas po namin, pupunta kami sa lab, tapos isi-screen namin. Ito yung enzyme, tapos ito yung molecule, tapos titingnan namin yung effect. Kung isipin po ninyo, kung isang scientist ay makakagawa lang po siguro ng 20 experiments in a day, mabagal pa rin po yun. But if you actually run computational chemistry studies, na first and foremost, maganda naman din po yung quality ng pagkakagawa, high quality yung result. Ibig sabihin po nun, you're saving the scientists the time that they might end up like wasting working on candidates na hindi naman po talaga gagana. So ito po yung sinasabi namin na ang maganda po kasi talaga kapag gagawa kayo ng research at the high school level, get in touch and work with local universities. Yan po, may mga colleges po dyan, meron po dyan mga chemistry, physics, biology, molecular biology professors, and work with them, get their guidance po. Kasi more likely sila po yung local partners na mahahanap ninyo. Kami po may mga plano kaming mentorship program na gagawin. Nagre-recruit po kami ng mga STEM practitioners sa bansa na hopefully po mai-pair up namin sa mga student groups para po mag-guide kayo sa research. No? Pero habang hindi pa po namin nagagawa yun at more likely po sa sobrang dami din naman po ng mga estudyante sa Pilipinas, mas maganda po sigurong ma-promote natin yung ganong culture of people engaging local experts. So hindi po kailangang mga scientists po na kaparehas namin na nasa abroad or yung mga nasa pinakamalalaking university po sa Pilipinas. So one thing that I would challenge for you all to do is to get to know your local experts. Sino ba yung mga professors dun sa mga local universities niyo? And wag po kayong mahihiyang mag-reach out sa kanila.
Yan, tama si Kuya Jeff. Actually, this computational research is a widely used tool sa lahat ng leading researches, may it be cancer, vaccine, pharmaceuticals, etc. Lahat gumagamit ng molecular docking and computational chemistry kasi mapapadali yung trabaho nila. This is a type of high throughput screening kasi yun yung sinasabi ni Kuya Jeff kanina. Trial and error kasi kapag wala pang computational chemistry, lahat itatry mo. Pero kapag may computational chemistry na 100 molecules at a time, pwede mo siyang isalang. And then top 10, yun na lang yung magpo-proceed forward.
Okay. And if you're curious po about high throughput experimentation, meron po kaming webinar last January on the design of experiment. So yun po, balikan niyo po yun, naka-record din po yun sa YouTube channel namin kung gusto niyo pong maintindihan itong mga terms na to. Paano ba yung high throughput screening? For example, kung limitado ang resources ninyo sa laboratory, pwede ba kayong gumamit ng computational software para i-identify po ano ba yung mga experiment na dapat nyo i-prioritize para makakuha pa rin kayo ng meaningful data kahit kakaunti ang inyong resources.
Okay. So that brings me to my last topic. Medyo napahaba tayo sa CompuChem kasi medyo mahalaga talaga to eh. Actually, ito is magandang technology talaga tong CompuChem. Lalo na ngayon sa pandemic, kailangan yung gawin to. I mean, ito talaga yung option na pwede nyong gawin na hindi naman ganun kahirap. Kailangan nyo lang talaga ng internet at saka ng medyo maayos na laptop. Hindi pa pala. Last two pa pala. So, we have also what we call quantitative surveys. So, hindi pa pala last. Ito, medyo social sciences, pwede. So, ano ba yung mga pwede natin? Nagbigay na lang ako ng magandang example para makita nyo. So, eto, kunwari COVID-19 vaccine ang topic natin, possible survey topics. Sa pre-test, hayaan niyo yung participants nyo na magsagot ng questionnaire about COVID-19 vaccine. Acceptability, anong alam nila, what are their preferences, etc., etc. And then after that, you put an intervention. So ang intervention, pwedeng mag-conduct kayo ng seminar with the respondents about COVID-19 vaccine na expert yung magsasalita. And then after that, you conduct another post-test. Na same questionnaire na pinasagutan nyo sa kanila ng una, tingnan nyo lang kung paano magbabago yung behavior ng respondents nyo after your post-test. So this is a qualitative research actually kasi pwedeng metrics yung gamitin nyo eh. Halimbawa, what is your confidence on COVID-19 vaccine? Rate from 1 to 5. So 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest, etc., etc. So makikita nyo kung may effect ba yung intervention nyo. Or gumamit kayo ng iba pang intervention. Like say for example, may isang tao na na-vaccinan na magto-talk sa kanila. Anong experience about the vaccine, ano yung mga nakuha niyang side effects, etc., etc. And after that, post-test about the confidence on COVID-19 vaccine. So pwedeng isang type yun ng research. Meron din tayong tinatawag na research na yung questionnaire mo is two parts pero wala ng intervention. Kunwari, ito pa lang sa COVID-19 vaccine, pwede nyo itong gamitin sa staggered age group. So pwedeng teenagers group, pwedeng sa seniors group, pwedeng yung mid-age 40 to 60, 20 to 40, etc., etc. Bahala kayo kung anong gusto nyong respondents ng age, kayo yung magse-set. So kasi iba-iba yung preference pag tumatanda na or pag mas bata, ano bang preference nila sa vaccine, ganyan-ganyan, etc. etc. So, yun yung mga pwede nyong bounds na paglaruan in conducting surveys. Tapos yung dalawang parts ng survey na sinasabi ko kanina, kunwari, sa first part ng survey, ang question nyo is consumer preference before the pandemic. So, ano ba yung mga ginagamit yung apps, ano ba yung, kung gusto niyo ba pumupunta pa rin sa market, etc., etc. Or ano yung, gaano kayo kadalas pumunta sa market kapag nung pre-pandemic. Tapos sa kabilang side naman ng questionnaire, ano yung consumer preference after the pandemic? So, madalas ka na bang nag-food panda or gaano ka nakadalas na lang pumupunta sa market or sa grocery stores, etc., etc. And then compare. Tingnan nyo, syempre t-test lang yun, dalawang treatment lang yan eh. Kung significant ba yung difference nung before and after consumer preference, before and after the pandemic, etc., etc. So yun yung mga survey na pwede nyong gawin. So ito ay social sciences. So pero quantitative pa rin siya in essence kasi may rating ka pa rin na makukuha and pwede ka pa rin mag-apply ng statistical analysis. Kuya Jeff, would you like to add?
No.
Okay na 'yon. Okay, so ayan, ino-open lang namin sa inyo yung idea ng social sciences. Hindi naman siya talaga mali-left behind. Yes, Kuya JP.
Meron kasi Marty dito na question from YouTube. I just would like to address this as early as now. From Mary Lovelyn Olaer, what possible topics po regarding medical bio thesis that touches diseases can be epidemiologic approach na doable at home or in the community? Because I was looking for low-cost studies kasi individual ang thesis namin. So kasi dito sa part mo na to, mga survey topics, parang ito yung isa sa mga low cost na studies na pwede nating magamit for epidemiological research. Well, the most pressing now would be COVID-19, right? So parang if we can like pull our experiences, yung let's say well, kung magagawa natin na ethical itong mga survey research na to, we can contact like yung mga nag-positive sa COVID, yung kung ano yung mga symptoms nila. I'm just like saying things on the top of my head kasi parang ito lang yung kaya nating gawin eh, yung mga survey research na pwede nating gawin at this point kasi pwede nating parang i-message lang yung mga tao na yon. We can gather our data na hindi kailangang face to face, di ba?
Yep.
So,
and siguro, ito lang yung, kasi ang dami nga namin nakikita pong questions about ano bang pwedeng i-research daw about COVID, ano pang hindi na-discover, ganyan-ganyan. Sabi nga namin, computational study, if you're really after molecular biology type of research, pwede nyo pong i-apply yung computational studies. Kapag naman po surveys, at kapag medyo ano siya patient-facing siya, so just make sure po na wag na naman din po kayong we just have to qualify this. Wag po kayong ora-orada magpapa-survey kasi kailangan meron po tayo kasing privacy act parang
ethical concerns.
Ethical concerns. So dapat po bago kayo humingi ng information ng private information, personal information from people, dapat po chine-check niyo yan sa inyong mga local.
At saka may guidelines siya as far as I know.
So, kailangan po, ito po yung gusto din namin sabihin. So, we're opening the aperture for different types of research po, no? That you can do within the community. But then there are sensitivities around it po. Hindi po pwedeng basta nyo na lang siya gagawin. For example, yung sinabi po ni Martin na mag-biodiversity research kayo, ay wag po kayo mag-i-invade ng private property. Kasi baka naman po baka po saktan kayo ng may-ari. So,
wait lang. Oo nga, sorry Kuya Jeff. Bawal din po sa indigenous land.
Wag po kayong papasok doon sa mga lugar ng ating mga katutubo. So kailangan i-check nyo yan. Take the things that we tell you, that we suggest that you do, take them with a grain of salt po. So tingnan nyo po yung
and discuss it carefully with your thesis advisor or your teacher.
Teachers.
Para yan.
Apo, wag po
Sorry po,
tayong
nakalimutan. Sorry,
Apo, wag po,
nakalimutan na.
wag po tayong papasok sa sa hacienda ng may hacienda kasi baka po meron silang
Mabaril
atake
tayo.
dyan. Baka mahabol po kayo ng aso. So wag po natin
Yes, tama 'yon. Tama yung sinabi ni Kuya Jeff. But ito maganda talaga tong topic na to. But of course, dapat meron kayong data privacy disclaimer out there kapag gumagawa kayo ng survey. For sure, if you have a social scientist, alam na alam nila kung paano to gagawin na expert. Hindi lang ako expert sa social science, but this is a good entry point to that.
And I'm also confident naman na yung mga estudyante naman, hindi naman sila mag-perform agad ng research without the approval of their teachers. So, consult your teachers first, no? When you're designing experiments or when you're about to execute a plan. Kasi at the end of the day, ang mga estudyante dapat iisipin ninyo, your teachers are responsible sa kung ano man yung mangyayari sa inyo when you do the research. So, magbigay galang kayo din sa kanila na, ma'am, ito po yung napag-usapan natin na plan of experiment. Tama po ba tong approach? Consult with them. Meron po ba kaming mga considerations na nakalimutan? So, those are some of the best practices of, students na kailangan, dala-dala ninyo, no, when you perform these experiments at home.
Okay, so, ayan. So, social science. Meron din tayo sa social science. So, hindi tayo papatalo. Dapat meron sa bawat fields. All right. So, the next one, I guess this is the last one that I'll discuss thoroughly. Yung iba parang papasadahan na lang. So, we have meteorology topics. Ito, medyo madali lang siya na topic. Pwede kayo mag-measure ng rainfall, temperature, and relative humidity on certain areas. Like say, for example, kung 5 kayo sa group, tas iba't ibang barangay kayo sa town na yon, pwede nyong i-compare yung rainfall data, temperature data, relative humidity data doon sa mga barangay nyo. Example kasi, minsan, di ba, napapansin nyo, umuulan sa isang barangay pero hindi umuulan sa isang barangay. Ganon. Pwedeng magkaroon kayo ng differences on rainfall, differences on temperature, and differences in relative humidity. And these are important parameters actually kasi say for example, nag-measure kayo ng rainfall during the La Nina season, makikita nyo kung halimbawa magkakaibang bayan kayo, makikita nyo kung aling bayan yung pinaka-apektado ng La Nina kasi makikita nyo yung amount of rainfall na tumulo doon sa kunwari specific bayan na yon. Itong mga rainfall gauge, may nabibili nito sa Lazada. At saka yung mga tamang experimental design and how to carry out the experiment, you can search it all over Google. Maraming studies about how to measure rainfall precipitations within the area. So pwede yung gamiting references. Also, same is true with temperature. Anong mga bayan ba or anong mga barangay ba yung pinakamatataas yung temperature during El Nino? So malamang sila yung mga bayan na kunwari, farming community kayo, malamang sila yung mga bayan na kailangan ng irrigation during El Nino kasi matataas yung temperature nila. Same is true with relative humidity. Ito naman, di ba, anong Tagalog sa humidity? Alinsangan. So, pwede nating ma-measure yung alinsangan. So, these are just topics na meron ding effect sa community. So, hindi lang basta kayo nag-measure ng rainfall, pwede nyo makita din yung trend ng rainfall kung every year ganito yung topic na ipapagawa ng teacher nyo. So again, not just focusing on the short term, this is for the teachers, not just focusing on the short term outcome, but on the long term outcome. So mas dumalas ba yung baha sa bayan nyo dahil tumaas yung rainfall count within 10 years, etc., etc. So ano yung mga interventions na pwede nyong gawin? So mag-build ng kanal, ganyan, or more mga interventions na pwede niyong gawin para ma-equalize yung kunwari pagtaas ng rainfall or pagtaas ng temperature, etc., etc. So those are the topics that you can pursue at home. So ito yung, as a summary, ito lang yung mga possible topics na sinabi ko kanina: practical agriculture, biodiversity, app development, computational, quantitative survey, meteorology. But you can also venture on robotics. If you are into robotics and engineering, you can also venture in data science. Magkakaroon po kami ng talk sa data science, kaya hindi ko siya diniscuss dito because I don't want to preempt the talk of Kevin season. Kailan nga to, Kuya Jeff?
April 3.
April 3.
April 3. So, he's a leading data scientist in the Philippines. So, watch out for that. Pwede rin yung gawin yon sa bahay nyo, yung data science. So, hindi na ako nag-discuss ng other topics related to data science because i-discuss na yung lahat ni Kevin. So, as a final slide for my talk, I'll just give you a quote from Sun Tzu. Siya po ay isang Chinese military general na credited for as the author of The Art of War. Sabi niya, it does not take sharp eyes to see the sun and the moon, nor does it take sharp ears to hear the thunderclap. Wisdom is not obvious. You must see the subtle and notice the hidden to be victorious. So ang gusto ko lang pong sabihin dito or ang key takeaway ko is marami tayong pwedeng gawin. Kahit may pandemic tayo, we have a lot of things na pwede natin gawin for research topic. We just need to know where the entry points are. And kami po sa Filipino Science Hub, we're leading you to those entry points. And ito nga po, kaya po kami naglalagay ng ganitong topic sa inyo right now. We're leading you to those entry points. And we are actually providing you enough wisdom for you to see the subtle and notice the hidden. And sana po kasama rin po kami sa PhilSci Hub na matulungan namin kayo na maging victorious in your research endeavor in the future. And with that, I conclude my talk. Thank you po for listening and I turn over the floor to Kuya Jeff. Thank you po.
Okay. So, okay. I thought I was muted. Okay. So, salamat Marty. Part ko na naman na po. This is the third part. Bibilisan ko po kasi alam ko nagsa-start 12 noon na dyan sa Pilipinas. So, kung gusto niyo pong kumain habang nakikinig sa akin, don't hesitate po. Hindi po yan problema. So, sisimulan ko po yung part ko sa sermon. So nagbabasa po ako sa YouTube ng mga comments, no. So meron pa rin po mga comments diyan na sir, pwede ba kayo magbigay ng abstract ng topic na pwede namin gawin? Sir, ano po yung topic na pwedeng gawin dito? Minsan po as a scientist po, I get frustrated po minsan, hindi naman po dahil personally na-offend ako, no. I get frustrated with the fact po na yung mga teachers po talaga natin nahihirapan rin po sila na mag-identify ng topic or mag-facilitate ng ideation sa mga estudyante na typical po pag nag-outreach activities kami sa Pilipinas before nung pandemic. Lagi pong tanong sa amin, sir, bigyan niyo po kami ng data. So ito po yung gusto naming itama. So ngayon po, si Marty tsaka si JP, in-introduce, tinuruan po kayo ng iba't ibang klase ng research. Si Marty po, nag-suggest siya ng iba't ibang areas na pwede niyong i-explore. Ngayon naman po, ang ituturo ko sa inyo, this is actually a very relevant exercise to both students and teachers. Paano ba mag-generate ng idea? So sa halip po na lalapit kayo sa mga scientists, dapat ang mga estudyante at ang mga teachers marunong ng proseso sa kung paano ba mag-generate ng idea. At ito po, I encourage you na makinig po dito kasi hindi po to ganun kahirap. Meron lang po siyang sistema na kailangan yung sundin para po makapag-facilitate kayo ng idea generation or what we call the ideation process. So like yung part ko po, it's about the ideation process, the art of brainstorming for research project ideas. Okay. So yung talk ko po ngayon, there are 4 parts to it. So the first of which is, papasadahan po natin, ano ba yung purpose ng ideation process? Ano ba yung kahalagahan nun? Bakit tayo nag-ideate? Bakit tayo perform ng exercises para mag-identify ano ba yung idea na gagawin natin for research? Pangalawa naman po, papasadahan ko, ano ba yung mga steps involved in the ideation process? And ito po, para sa mga guro, makinig po kayo. Kasi kayo po talaga dapat yung nagpa-facilitate nito sa inyong mga estudyante. Hindi po dapat ang mga guro ang nag-iisip ng research topic. Dapat po nagpa-facilitate lang po kayo para yung mga estudyante ninyo mag-generate ng topic. Ganun po talaga dapat yung setup when it comes to research even at the high school level. Third case po, syempre, hindi po kasi, ang approach po namin dito sa PhilSci Hub ay hindi po para bigyan kayo ng textbook lecture. Kasi what's the point? Di magbasa na lang po kayo ng libro. So yung third part po, we'll go over a case study. May example po tayo. Paano ba, in a hypothetical scenario, paano ba tayo pipili ng topic? So for example, ang gagaling ng estudyante nyo, ang dami-daming ideas na binibigay, at ang resources nyo ay pwedeng pang isa o dalawang topics lang. How do you systematically pick the right idea? Ano ba yung mga basehan kung paano kayo pipili? And then yung last part po, very quickly, is magbibigay po ako ng tips and best practices kung paano ba talaga pumili ng idea. Okay. Next. Okay, so ito po, hypothetical scenario. Dapat po dito nagsa-start, no? Yung research program development at the high school level. So nagsisimula yan sa guro kasi 'di ba part ng curriculum ngayon yung research na. So for example po sa isang classroom, sasabihin ng guro, okay class, we need to come up with research ideas. So dun siya dapat magsisimula. The teacher has to solicit. Dapat po kayo yung hihingi ng suggestions for ideas from your students. No? So sa mga estudyante, hindi dapat kayo aasa sa guro na sila yung mag-identify o ito dapat yung gagawin nyo. So in as early as in the high school level, dapat marunong kayong mag-scan ng environment ninyo, dapat marunong kayong mag-formulate ng question at come up or identify ng potential research idea. So, for example, kung ang classroom niyo ay 30 students, syempre, wala namang resources dyan for everyone to do individual research. Di more likely, out of 30 ideas, baka 2 o 3 lang yung pwede nyong trabahuhin. So, dito dapat, you have to come up with a systematic process for you to narrow down a pool of 30 ideas all the way down to the top 3. So, ito yung ituturo natin sa inyo ngayon. Okay. But before tayo mag-go over the steps of the ideation process, ito yung mga typical na questions, no, na pag yung mga guro hindi po talaga sanay mag-facilitate ng ideation among their students, ito yung typical questions na maririnig nyo sa mga bata. Like, una po, where do we start? Paano ba natin sisimulan yung ideation process at saan pa tayo hahanap ng ideas? So ito po, sana yung answer to the first question, sana ito po yung mga nakuha nyo dun sa mga information na deliver sa inyo ni JP dun at ni Marty dun sa kanilang talk. Ano ba yung types ng research at ano ba yung mga specific research areas na pwede ninyong i-pursue. So dun siya nagsa-start. Pangalawa, how do we encourage idea sharing? So for example po, on the perspective of teachers po, kung meron kayong 30 students, paano nyo ba may encourage yung mga estudyante nyo na mag-come up ng idea? Kasi syempre, iba-iba na personalities yan. Yung iba confident, yung mga matatalino, more likely sila yung maraming sasabihin. May mga estudyante na baka hindi confident kasi natatakot sila, baka mamaya yung idea nila ay hindi maganda. So is there such a thing as a stupid idea? Yun din po yung i-address natin mamaya. Yung iba pa pong mga question, yun nga po, yung question ng estudyante, baka pangit yung idea ko, pwede ko ba itong i-suggest kasi baka mapagalitan ako ni ma'am. Baka i-bash ako ng classmates ko. So ito pong mga bagay na to yung sasagutin natin mamaya. Pangatlong tanong po, how do we systematically pick the best idea out of a collection of topics? Kasi syempre, no, ang tendency sa klase, kapag yung pinakamatalinong estudyante yung nag-suggest, medyo may bias yung teacher doon na, ay, ito, galing sa matalino, so baka ito yung pinakamaganda. That does not always follow po. So it could actually be a fallacy. So ito yung, tuturuan ko po kayo, paano ba yung systematic way of listing your idea, prioritizing them, and then picking the best idea without bias. So ito po, may sistema po yan at napakasimple lang yan. And then lastly, how long should the ideation take? So kailangan ba yung ideation isang session lang na pag kinausap niyo yung estudyante niyo at naglista sila, mamimili na ba kayo ng idea at that point? So ito po yung mga ituturo ko sa inyo. Okay. So, but before we go over the steps in the ideation process, kailangan muna natin i-define yung napaka-importante pong mga terms. So what is ideation, or what is this thing called the brainstorming process? So ito po yung mga definitions nito, like from reputable sources online. So for example, ideation is the capacity for or the act of forming or entertaining ideas. So ito po yung sinabi, the act of forming and entertaining ideas. So dito po may active participation ang teachers at saka ang students. So sa high school, kaya po nang sinabi namin, we highly encourage students, even in as early as at the high school level, you have to be able to generate your own ideas or formulate questions. And on the side naman po ng teachers, entertaining ideas. So there's no such thing as a stupid idea. Whenever you're executing an ideation process, mali po na i-dismiss niyo yung idea na pangit or stupid. That If you do that on the first day of the ideation, that defeats the purpose of the process. And then yung term na brainstorming. So it is the mulling over of ideas by one or more individuals in an attempt to devise or find the solution or a problem. So kung sa mga kaparehas ko pong scientists, pag sinabi po sa aming brainstorming exercise, 10, 20 po kaming scientists na papapasukin sa isang room at ilalabas po lahat ng ideas namin, no matter how crazy the idea might sound. Kasi yung idea po, posibleng super original, wala pang nakakagawa. So typically yung mga tao, meron silang skepticism about those kinds of ideas kasi ay wala kang basis, medyo baliw yung idea mo. Pero meron din naman po mga ideas or na ipopropose na based that's more of an application of an existing knowledge or technology na typically ang bias ng mga tao is towards that. So pero gaya nga po na sinasabi namin, whenever you're doing a brainstorming activity, dapat po hindi nyo dinidismiss yung mga ideas, lalo na on the first day. Kasi may tama po yung proseso. Okay. Ito po ang mga characteristics of an effective brainstorming exercise or ideation exercise. So the first of which is it should be a relaxed, informal approach to problem solving. So hindi po ito yung dapat formal-formalan na magre-report sa teacher, tapos yung teacher tatalakan yung estudyante, ay mali yan, ganyan. Hindi po ganyan dapat yung brainstorming process. It should be informal. Dapat po you're encouraging the students to speak up. Kasi posible po na meron po kayong henyo or innovative na estudyante na hindi po ganun ka-vocal. So kapag po nag-ideation process kayo at makikinig lang kayo sa matatalino at makikinig lang kayo sa madadaldal, you might be missing out on some very good ideas. So what's very important during the ideation process is that you should encourage everyone to communicate their ideas. For example po, in a classroom setting, kung via oral delivery po ng ideas at may napapansin kayo mga tahimik dyan, posible niyo pong kausapin after the session, kung hindi mo masabi, sulatin mo at baka maganda yung idea mo. So this is actually one thing that we encourage teachers to do. Tanggalin po ninyo yung intimidating aura ninyo sa klase. Kasi kapag po takot sa inyo yung mga estudyante, more likely po matatakot, ma-intimidate yung mga yan to communicate their ideas. So gaya nga po ng sinabi namin, para dumali po ang trabaho ng mga guro at hindi po lagi kayo ang mag-generate ng ideas para sa mga estudyante, make the environment as friendly and encouraging as possible para po ang ideas manggaling sa estudyante mismo. Pangalawa po, an effective brainstorming process encourages people to come up with ideas which can be novel or application of an existing solution. So medyo sinabi ko na po ito kanina. So again, sa first day ng ideation, wag po kayong magdi-dismiss ng idea na wag niyo munang i-criticize na ay pangit yan, walang sense yan. And at the same time po, sa first day ng ideation process, dapat po hindi niyo pinipili yung winner, hindi niyo sasabihin ay yan yung pinakamaganda, yan na yung trabahuhin natin. Kasi ang tamang ideation process po, ang unang araw, i-define niyo yung purpose at manghihingi kayo ng tanong. Posible pong ang mga ideas ay ibigay ng estudyante sa second or third session. At bago po kayo pumili ng idea, you have to set some criteria na lalagyan nyo ng score ang bawat idea, and then you let the set of criteria pick the best idea, the best topic for research. So ayan po yung ipapakita ko sa inyo sa mga susunod na slides. Okay, and then now we're moving on to the steps of an ideation process. So clarification. Ito pong sistema na i-share ko sa inyo, ito po yung sistema na na-expose ako over the past 14 years of doing research. So, pero this is not to say na ito lang po yung pamamaraan. Kasi paano ko yung ideation ninyo ay isang tao lang yung involved, di ba? So, ito pwede nyo rin itong i-apply. Pero may iba-iba po rin po yung mga format. Depende din sa nature ng research work na gagawin ninyo. Okay. Okay, so one very important question po that we have to answer before we go through the steps is how do we ensure that the ideation process is facilitated effectively and without bias? So sabi nga po namin kanina, dapat kung sino man pong ang role ng teacher dito is to steward all the ideas and make sure that they're given enough respect and equal respect. So equal respect for all the ideas. So dapat po hindi po pipiliin ng group or ng teacher ang idea kasi nanggaling siya sa pinakamatalino. Kasi hindi naman po laging gano'n. Hindi laging ang pinakamatalino ang nagbibigay ng best idea. So, yun po. So, kailangan meron kayong scoring system. Okay, so the first thing that you have to do is define the purpose of the ideation. So, for example po, kung sa high school level, baka naman ang sasabihin lang ng teacher, kailangan nyo na research topic. So kapag po ganun yung pag-define nyo ng purpose ng ideation, more likely kalat-kalat po yung ideas na makukuha nyo dyan. Pero po, for example po, halimbawa, ang sasabihin ng teacher ay, kailangan natin mag-come up ng research topics na relevant para sa mga mangingisda ng ating komunidad. So ganun po, mas guided. Kumbaga yung scope ng topics na pwede ninyong ma-generate, mas ano na siya, mas focus na siya. So hindi po masyadong magulo yung ideation process. But then again, if kailangan broad yung types ng topics na i-come up ng students nyo, then the framing session can actually be as broad as possible. The second step is solicit ideas from all team members. Again, I cannot emphasize enough, all team members. So, dapat po talaga humihingi kayo ng input sa lahat ng members ng inyong team or ng inyong klase. Pangatlo po is you have to define a set of criteria or a scoring system for research topic selection. So this should be based on the objectives and the accessibility of resources. So ngayon po, lalo na ngayon sa pandemic, hindi nyo po pwedeng hingan lang yung estudyante nyo ng topic, pero at the end of the day, baka mamaya wala namang access sa resources, hindi naman nila magagawa. And then again, at the same time po, baka yung target, yung mga objectives po ng project, baka naman wala din kayong ma-justify na impact nung gagawin nila. So kailangan po ito yung responsibilidad ng teacher na matulungan rin sila. Paano ba nila i-define yung set ng criteria for you to say that that project is actually worth pursuing. Okay, now, the fourth step po, gaya na sinabi ko kanina, hindi po kayo pipili ng best idea sa first session. This is an exercise po, sometimes it takes like 1 month or 2 months na meron po kayong regular meetings para po ilista niyo yung ideas, and then at the same time, bago po kayo magbigay ng score to a particular topic, you have to let your students perform background research. So for example po, if I'm one of the students and I propose 2 different topics, I should be given enough time, siguro 2, 3, or 4 weeks to perform background research. So kailangan po talagang i-justify ko kay teacher na ito pong idea ko ay maganda dahil ito po ang ito po yung impact niya, ito po yung objective niya, ito po yung feasibility niya, kaya ko ba itong gawin in 4 to 6 months. So yun po yung mga bagay na kailangan maging basehan bago po ninyo piliin yung idea as the best idea proposed. And then the last step po is regroup and rank the ideas based on background information. So sabi ko nga po, hindi po yung biases ng teachers at students ang mamimili. Hindi po yung paborito ng teacher ang pipiliin. Yung score system po ninyo ang maglalabas po kung ano talaga yung pinaka magandang idea. So ito po, tip number 2 po, quality background research and a well-defined set of criteria would facilitate the identification of the best research, the best and the most suitable research topic to pursue. So yun po yung ini-emphasize ko po sa inyo. Yung ideation, hindi lang maglilista kayo ng idea off the top of your head. Meron na din po ditong involved na steps sa scientific method na you have to do your background research and formulate your question. And then that's actually when you come up with a conclusion as to which is the best idea. Okay, so ito po yung example. Hindi naman po ito masyadong matagal. So for example, sa isa pong lugar, nagkaroon ng framing session for research ideas ang teacher. And what she says is, class, we need to identify a research topic that the class can pursue without having to come to the school's lab. And the project should be doable in 4 to 6 months. So ito po yung sinasabi kong framing session. So doon pa lang sa statement ng teacher, it sets the purpose. Now, kailangan maka-identify tayo ng research topic and then the initial scope. So dapat daw yung research na ipe-perform ay doable sa kahit hindi kayo pumapasok sa lab. And then at the same time, dapat matapos na siya in 4 to 6 months. So doon pa lang po, napakahalaga po kung paano inilalatag ng teacher kung ano ba yung requirements for a research topic po. Kasi pag hindi nyo po ito kinwalify in as early as possible, baka po ang i-propose ng estudyante nyo ay pang bachelor's thesis na 2 years in the making. Na alam nyo naman po na hindi pwedeng gawin. So, isave po natin sila from the unnecessary work by making sure na clear po ang pag-communicate natin ng purpose at ng scope ng ating research projects, lalo na po sa high school level. Okay, so for example po, sa scenario na to, ang klase po ay is in a province where majority of the population is engaged in agriculture. So ito po, I'm just qualifying the situation po kasi makikita nyo kung paano ba natin i-rank yung ideas. And when the teacher solicited for ideas, so say like on the second and third meeting, this is the collection of ideas that the students actually came up with. So for example, one of them proposed a project on robotics. Na napaka-general yung pagkakasabi, robotics. Yung second student naman, she said, oh yeah, I would like to perform plant research for plantitos and plantita. So medyo, ito specific po, kasi research about plants, and then, specific rin po yung demographic na target. She actually would like to perform research na relevant sa mga tao who are interested in planting vegetables like in their gardens or ornamental plants. The third one is I would like to perform a biodiversity research. So medyo broad pa rin yung pagkakasabi niya. Hindi niya alam kung saan niya ba gagawin, gaano kalawak yung survey na gagawin niya. The fourth one is modeling studies to identify candidates for COVID-19 treatment. So ito naman, it's fairly specific, no? So, okay, modeling studies, they already know how they would like to approach it. And then, the specific target area is COVID-19 treatment identification. So gusto nila mag-screen ng drug candidates. And then the fifth idea naman is to study local rainfall variability. So gaya ng sinabi kanina ni Marty. So now, kapag po on the perspective of teacher, kapag po ganito ka-diverse yung topics na binibigay sa inyo, baka mapakamot kayo sa ulo. Paano ba tayo pipili? Paano natin pipiliin yung best idea? Kasi lahat magaganda di ba? Lahat sila are representing some of the topics that Marty mentioned earlier. But then again, context po. Sabi namin kanina, dun sa ideation process, dapat doable even if you don't come to the lab, and then it should be finished within 4 to 6 months. And then lastly, yun pong lugar ng mga estudyante, they live in a province where majority of the people are actually engaged in agriculture. So ito po, so yung gagawin ng teacher is ililista niya lahat ng idea. And then pag nalista na po yung idea, hindi rin po kayo ora-oradang magpipick ng best idea dito. The next thing that you should ask your students to do is to perform background research. What would be the reason why these studies are to be pursued? And before nyo po sila i-send back home or i-assign na mag-perform ng background research, you should also define a set of ranking criteria. So for example po, pagdating po sa sinabi nating ranking criteria, posible pong, students, you proposed these topics, but then you have to perform background research in a span of 2 to 3 weeks, and you should answer these questions. So for the idea that you're proposing, are there available resources? Second is, what would be the impact of your research? Third, very important attribute is, would the research you're proposing be doable within 4 to 6 months? And your answers to these things should be based on background information. Hindi lang to, the students are not supposed to make this up. They should present to you answers based on literature search. And then yung fourth criteria naman po is, are there local experts that you can consult and collaborate with for you to be able to perform the research at a fairly good, reasonable quality. So ito po yung set of criteria that you have to set for your students, and then they should be able to give you the answers based on the research background information that they will be gathering. So after po nun, pag sa sunod pang-4 o pang-5 session nyo na, pag nakapag-research na yung mga estudyante nyo, that's when you'll gather the entire group. And this is actually a very fun exercise. What you have to do is you have to tabulate your sets of ideas against the different criteria. And then you should assign a scoring system. So for example, you should score an idea a 1 for a particular criterion if it scores low. 2 for mid-level, and then 3 for if it's scoring high. So for example po, we're gonna try to answer this. So in terms of resources, so for example, nasa probinsya po yung mga bata, and one student suggested that they perform a research project on robotics, but then nasa probinsya kayo, mahirap bumili ng pyesa, so definitely mababa ang score nito when it comes to the availability of resources. Okay, plant research for plantitos and plantitas. So alam po ninyo na agricultural ang area ninyo. So alam niyo na yung mga iba't ibang halaman, madali lang hanapin or madaling patubuin kasi maraming mga magsasaka, maraming mga merong garden ang business. So ito, definitely mataas ang score niya sa resources kasi alam niyo makukuha niyo lang siya locally. Third idea is biodiversity survey. So alam niyo na nasa agricultural area kayo, so definitely yung vegetation ng inyong lugar ay mataas. So more likely, hindi nyo kailangan gumastos or hindi nyo kailangan mag-travel ng malayo. Nandun na yung mga resources na kailangan nyo. Pangatlo, modeling studies to identify candidates for COVID-19 treatment. So ito, kung computational study at medyo mahirap yung lugar at wala kayong access sa for example, sa software na medyo mahal po minsan yun, kung kailangan nyo bilhin, edi more likely mababa po yung score nito. And then, panglima, study local rainfall variability. So ito, siguro, kung kailangan nyo bilhin yung mga gadgets para gawin to, baka accessible sa ibang lugar, baka hindi accessible sa iba. So baka ito po hypothetical lang, no? Baka mid-level ang score niya dyan. And so what we try to do is we work with the students or with the team to populate all these criteria. So for example, impact, robotics, mataas kasi in siya, it's a cutting edge area. Research for plantitos and plantita. Alam nyo na if you generate data, learnings, masashare nyo sa maraming tao na matututo ng tamang pagtatanim or pag-aalaga ng halaman, mataas ang impact niyan. Biodiversity survey, so posibleng mid lang kasi baka mamaya hindi nyo alam kung ano yung magiging impact nito, sino makikinabang sa data na ma-generate ninyo. Modeling of COVID-19 treatments, so ito mataas kasi we're in the middle of a pandemic. So baka ito pwedeng yung i-pursue. So mataas yung score niya dyan. Study of local rainfall variability. You know that it is of importance, but then again, baka hindi niyo rin alam kung sino ba yung mga directly impacted ng knowledge from this research. So baka medyo mababa yung score niya in comparison to the other ones. Now, a third criterion is actually time. So robotics, baka medyo kasi you have to assemble the robot and wait for your equipment or spare parts to come in. Baka challenging yung 4 to 6 months kasi yung delivery ng supplies, mabagal siya ngayon. So baka 2 lang yung score niya. Time for plant research for plantitos and plantitas. For example yan, may mga halaman na pwedeng tumubo in a span of 2 to 3 months. So definitely doable siya within the 4 to 6 month research period. Biodiversity, definitely, it's the same thing because you're dealing with plants, hindi nyo na kailangang hanapin sa malalayong lugar yung mga halaman, di mataas rin yung score niya kasi alam niyo doable siya within the 4 to 6 month time frame. Modeling study, so again, depende sa access sa resources, baka kailangan nyo pang matuto ng basic coding to do this, so definitely kakain siya ng oras dun sa 6-month period na meron kayo. So yun, baka medyo moderate lang yung score niya, and then study of rainfall variability. Ay paano kung in a given 4 months hindi umulan? So hindi nyo siya masyadong magigauge. So baka medyo mababa yung score niya doon. And then yung last criteria dito sa ating case study is expert partner. So robotics, kung nasa probinsya kayo at malayo kayo sa major universities, baka wala kayong masyadong malapitan, baka mahirap siya. So dito sa case na to, mababa yung score. Research for plantitos and plantitas. Since agricultural yung area nyo, more likely meron dyang agriculture expert. So baka pwede kayo makonsulta. Biodiversity, siguro a score of a 2. Baka kasi halimbawa wala kayong mga biodiversity experts dyan. And then 1 for both the modeling study and the rainfall variability kasi yung mga meteorologists medyo mahirap silang hanapin kasi bihira yun sa atin sa Pilipinas. So kapag po na-score na, once you have already given a score, for each idea, considering all these set of criteria, what you have to do is you have to add up the score. And typically, the way we do this is multiplicative po yung score. So essentially, you'll multiply all the scores for all the 4 areas para po umangat talaga kung ano ba yung top ideas. Kasi kung yung i-add nyo lang yan, baka mababa yung score, hindi nyo medyo magkakalapit lang, baka hindi kayo makapag-decide. So for example, in this case, if you multiply the scores for resources, impact, time, experts, and partners, the first idea will score a 6, second an 81, third 36, a fourth a 6, and then the fifth is also a 6. So definitely po dito, say for example, kung sa klase po of 30, pwede kayo mag-form ng dalawang groups of 15 members, di baka po pwede nyo split. Yung isa, mag-work on plant research, on how to grow ornamental and vegetable plants within the backyard. And then yung second naman, they might be actually able to work on biodiversity research. So, ito po yung sinasabi namin sa inyo na yung sana po this part makes teachers realize that hindi po dapat ang burden laging nasa inyo sa pag-iisip ng topic. Dapat po talaga yung estudyante yung nag-iisip ng topics dyan. Your main role is actually to steward and to facilitate for them to perform these activities para matutunan po talaga nila yung scientific method. So hindi po talaga kayo dapat yung mamroblema na walang topics yung estudyante ko. The reason why the students are being required right now to perform research is for them to be able to exercise these activities and for them to learn the necessary skill sets. And alam nyo po, pag natutunan ng ganito yung mga estudyante nyo, ang gagaling na niyan sa college, saka even kahit po hindi sila maging scientist, pag pinag-research sila ng mga teachers nila at o sa trabaho nila after college, ang gagaling na po nila. At kayo po sa high school level ang nagturo sa kanila niyan. Okay, I'm down to my last 3 slides. So, best practices and tips. So these are some of the things that you should watch out for when conducting an ideation session. So unang-una po, idea solicitation. Pag nanghihingi kayo ng idea sa mga estudyante nyo, ano ba yung responsibility ng teachers? So unang-una po, clearly define the purpose and of the ideation exercise. Ano ba yung problems that you're trying to find solutions for? So that's very important. The second po is welcome all ideas, gaya na sinabi ko kanina. Kung meron mga estudyante hindi vocal, just try to spend some time or find ways to get answers from students who are not as vocal. Third is do not dismiss any idea prematurely unless sufficient background information is available. So again, wag po tayong masyadong bias. So kailangan po information-based ang ating pagpili ng idea. And then fourth bullet point is encourage every team member to participate and contribute. Hindi lang po ito natatapos sa paglilista ng idea, no? Even po sa scoring system, pwede pong magdebate ang mga estudyante. Why do you think this idea should score high on this criterion? So yun po, kailangan i-encourage nyo po yung intellectual exchange among your students. And then when it comes to idea selection naman po, ensure that the idea selection is information-based, as I said earlier, a balanced set of criteria. So hindi lang po yung, ito maganda tong idea na to. Kailangan pong ibabalanse nyo yan sa resources, sa timeline, and then again, kahit po sobrang ganda ng idea, kung wala din naman po talaga kayong masyadong access sa tamang mga gamit at wala pong mag-guide sa inyo na expert, di baka po masimulan po ninyo yung research, hindi din naman po ninyo matapos. So these are some of the things that you have to consider. The scoring of idea should be based on background information. So wag po tayo dun sa medyo mga false claims na ito maganda. Pag ang estudyante po ninyo sinabi sa inyo na ito po maganda po tong topic na to, tanungin po ninyo sila bakit. Bakit maganda yan? Ano yung basehan mo? Ano yung ebidensya mo kung bakit maganda yung proposal mo? And then lastly, again, review of literature and discussion with local experts help. So wag po kayo mahiya na lumapit sa mga eksperto sa inyong lugar kasi yung mga yun po more likely magiging masaya po yan na mag-share ng kanilang knowledge. Okay, now moving on to my second to the last slide is ano ba yung mga role ng team? So yung facilitator, yung teachers po or yung leader nung inyong mga estudyante should be able to solicit ideas and facilitate discussion. So again po, yung mga teachers po natin, dapat po friendly yung approach ninyo. You should not be dismissive. Dapat po hindi nyo tinatakot yung mga estudyante kasi pag takot na po sila sa inyo, ay tatahimik na lang po yung mga yan. More likely, hindi sila mag-share ng ideas. The role of the facilitator is to steward the systematic prioritization of ideas. Kasi kapag wala po kayong sistema, wala kayong sinet na criteria, magkakagulo lang po yan, magkakainisan lang po yan kasi ang tendency po ng mga estudyante is kailangan yung idea nila yung mapili. Paano kung hindi naman talaga maganda yung idea nila based on relevant information? So kailangan po, ang role po talaga dito ng teacher ay facilitator. The facilitator communicates the ideation outcome. So after po yung score, yung listahan ninyo, kailangan po i-deliberate po ninyo yun sa mga estudyante ninyo. We appreciate you sharing your ideas, but then, after all of our discussions and, the systematic scoring of all of the ideas, this is the outcome. So these are the top 2 ideas based on these justifications. So like that way po, pagkatapos ng ideation session, kapag na-encourage na discuss yung estudyante, nagpalitan sila ng kuro-kuro at ng kanilang mga na-discover based on background research, lahat po sila at the end of the day nag-contribute on how, like, they contributed to how the ideas were identified. So mababalik na naman yung rapport doon. Hindi po, wala dyang estudyante na mafe-feel na, ay, natalo ako kasi hindi napili yung idea ko. Hindi po. Kailangan at the end of the day, you have to reiterate, you have to give emphasis to the fact that it's a team activity. If you guys have identified a very good set of ideas, the entire team wins. So yun po yung napakahalaga. Kasi at the end of the day, sila rin yung magtatrabaho together to develop the research project. And then, when it comes to the team naman, the more ideas identified during the start of the ideation session, the better. Kasi baka mamaya, prioritize nyo yung ideas ng dalawang pinakamatalino, tapos later on, pagpatapos na yung research program, ma-realize nyo, ay, mas maganda pala yung idea nung isa, hindi lang pinakinggan. So it's very important that you actually bring your ideas forward. And then, what we call a functional team is needed. So kailangan, pag po na-identify na yung ideas, pag pinaggawa nyo sila ng background information, kailangan lahat gumagalaw. Lahat merong ambag sa background research. Yun po yung kailangan nyong magawa. Minsan po, pag takot sa makipag-usap sa teacher, you can also divide your teams into subgroups. So for example, kung 30 students yan, i-divide nyo into 6 groups of 5 members. At sige, kung natatakot kayo makipag-usap sa ibang estudyante, you should form a small group and discuss your ideas there and then i-report sa teacher. Pwedeng ganun din po. Pwede kayong magkaroon ng mga student facilitators kung medyo takot silang makipag-usap sa inyo. And then what's very important is yung rapport. So kailangan po meron pong positive relationship or dynamics like amongst your students, kasi kapag po medyo hindi sila magkakasundo or hindi sila komportable sa isa't isa, paano po kayo mag-share ng ideas? Okay. And then lastly, sabi nga po natin, dun sa example natin kanina, naka-identify tayo ng 2 top research topics. So, research about research on how to grow plants, for relevant to all plantitos and plantitas out there. And then biodiversity survey, yun po yung napili kanina based on the scoring system. So ano ba pagkatapos yan? Pag napili nyo na yung idea, ang dapat namang gagawin ng mga estudyante nyo ngayon is to develop a research proposal. So pagdating na doon sa research proposal, hindi na lang po yan yung idea. You have to talk about the background, the rationale for the conceptual framework, based upon which you pick that idea, and then your experimental plan. How do you actually, what are the methods that you plan to perform for you to be able to answer your research problems? And meron din po kaming webinar dyan on research proposal development. And the culmination of our research proposal development po is actually a competition that we will be that we're actually holding this year. It's called PhilSci-Hub's Lions din. So meron po yung information sa ating website. So it's open to all high school students and teacher groups. So ito po, yung mananalo po dyan will win about 10,000 pesos po. Munti ka na masabing dollars, baka mapasubo ako. 10,000 pesos po that you can use as research funding po for things that you would like to perform like this school year. And then meron po tayong 3 Lion's Choice. So yung po 3 nating judges, pipili po sila ng top ideas dyan. So for more information po, go to our website, go to our PhilSci-Hub Facebook page and on our YouTube channel, kasi meron po doon mga set of instructions on how teams of high school students and teachers can participate in this competition. So yung deadline po ng submission ng research proposal is on April 30. So, you have about 40 days from now to put together a research proposal and compete for that. So, magandang experience po dun sa competition na yan is lahat po na makakapasok sa semifinals will be mentored by a panel of Filipino scientists. And then, yun po. So, maganda po siyang mentorship opportunity. Talaga hirap ang Tagalog, matututo po kayo na mag-initiate ng research with guidance from seasoned Filipino scientists po from different parts of the world. So at this point po, I would like to end by my presentation. I'm hoping that you actually learned, the process of ideation, and sana po yung mga teachers ito mapagawa nyo na to sa mga estudyante nyo, guys. Sabi ko nga po, hindi nyo problema dapat yung topic kasi dapat nanggagaling to sa mga estudyante. Ayun.
Thank you very much, JP, Marty, and Jeff. So I hope everyone learned a lot. I myself, so medyo natutuwa pa rin ako pag nakakarinig ako ng mga ganitong mga topics. So to refresh and to give me ideas on my own about how to conduct research and how to encourage my student to conduct research. So we are open for a few questions. Okay? So merong mga questions na nakapost dito sa Zoom kanina. I will read some of them. First question is from Janelle Bernice Guion, a public school teacher from Don Vicente Rama Memorial National High School in Cebu. So I think this is important. Do you consider a research as a failed research if objectives aren't met?
No.
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 So medyo i-clarify natin
Why?
yung mga sagot natin.
Akala ko fast talk. Akala ko fast talk lang na yes.
Hindi.
Okay, so ako na muna. Ako siguro I would take charge like sa pagsagot ng tanong na to kasi ako yung pinakamatagal na pong scientist. The answer is no. Kasi siguro ito yung notion na kailangan nating itama sa Pilipinas. Kasi ang expectation po kasi ng karamihan ng mga tao na hindi experience sa research is nagtatagumpay lang yung research or successful lang yung research kapag yung hypothesis ninyo ay na-validate. Kapag ang sagot sa inyong hypothesis is yes, tama ang aking predictions, ganyan. Pero hindi po talaga yun. Posible po na iba yung makuha yung sagot, but then the answer is a discovery. Posibleng iba ang gusto niyang gawin, pero may na-discover kayong some invention or fundamental science understanding that is actually disruptive na yun po by accident nakita nyo. So kapag ganun yung outcome, hindi po. At ultimately, okay siguro mag-perform kayo ng experiment at talagang wala kayong nakuha na data. What that teaches you is that the experimental design or your approach to answer the question is not the most suitable approach. So natututo pa rin po kayo. So if you actually can continue the experiment, then alam nyo, hindi nyo nagagawin yung same na experiment na nag-fail. So there is no such thing as a failed experiment. But there's such thing as objectives that are not met. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you failed. So nasa ano po yan, kung paano nyo ipoprocess yung data and how you communicate it.
And in case
Do you have
that
some additions? Yes. Yes, JP.
Kasi yung kailangan natin i-qualify yung failed experiment. So you have to look into the reasons why it failed.
Yep.
Kasi baka mamaya may mali doon sa experimental design natin na that would bring about an evolution on the research question, 'di ba? Parang pwede nating isipin kung bakit ba nag-fail yung experiment. Ano yung mali natin na ginawa? Para sa susunod
Hindi
ang
mo
tawag
na
dito?
ulitin yun.
Hindi na natin maulit. So, yun nga, parang we learn from the mistakes, if you will.
And yun po kasi
Marty?
talaga, you're performing experiments not because alam mong gagana. Kasi kapag ganun, baka may mali dun sa ano. Baka bias yung experiment mo.
Yeah.
You're designing the experiment because you're expecting an answer but that doesn't necessarily ensure you that you're gonna get to that answer. Kasi kapag alam mo na, ay, gagawin ko to kasi alam kong positive yung result na makukuha ko, may bias yung experiment mo. Mali mo.
Yeah, but if you examined your methodology and tama naman yung ginawa mo, sound din yung methodology mo, an unconventional result is still a result. So let us normalize having a result that is not within the bounds of our hypothesis. Kasi minsan nagiging source of stress yan ng mga estudyante natin.
Yeah, and one more thing that I can suggest as a practicing scientist rin is, pag nakakuha kayo ng weird na result, You should not just like wallow and say that, oh, iba yung nakuha kong result, therefore mali. Hindi. What you should do is you should go back and research the literature. Did other people observe something similar? Kasi baka weird lang siya sa'yo kasi hindi yan yung ine-expect mo. But then that kind of weird might actually be an important answer to other questions.
Yes. Tsaka yung mga unconventional results, dyan nakukuha yung magagandang findings.
Discoveries, tama.
Discoveries, yes.
Actually, I mean, I have had a bunch of experiences like that in grad school na I and even in my previous work in Chicago where I was aiming to make something and then miraculously another compound was formed. Even compounds that we thought are actually impossible to form based on fundamental understanding of inorganic and organic chemistry. So yung mga ganung bagay, yun po, there's no such thing as like a failed or a wrong result. It could just be that it's a different result. Siguro ganun yun na lang siya tingnan para hindi kayo ma-stress. Siguro kung talagang gusto niyo mahanap yung tama niyong sagot, ang edges niyo yung experimental approach niyo. Gaya nga po na sinasabi namin dati, tayo yung mag-a-adjust sa science kasi nature will tend to do what it wants to do. Hindi po natin malalabanan ang nature. So, baka po kaya hindi gumagana siya in the way that you expect for it to actually behave o yung experiment niyo ay baka kailangang imasahe, kailangang ayusin pa yung inyong experimental design.
Or reframe your research question or
Or baka
hypothesis.
naman talagang imposible. Baka naman talagang imposible siyang magawa. There are also research ideas like that. Na, okay, on paper it looks good, but then it's just really impossible to achieve. So may mga ganun po. At kapag, for example, gaya po naming lahat, when you go to grad school, sometimes for every 100 experiments that you perform, none of them will work. Zero ang results. Ganun. Pero you have to be able to learn from all those quote-unquote failed experiments.
Yes. So, totoo po yung 100 experiment and all failed.
Opo, kami po
And
mga
iyak ka na lang
scientists.
kasi hindi mo na matatapos yung PhD
Opo,
thesis.
kami po lahat ng mga scientists, lahat po kami bugbog na, sanay, manhid na po kami, sanay na po kami nasasaktan at nagpi-fail. Ganyan po.
It's yung failed research, yung failed results, think of it like it's a good way to look into your methodology. Tapos another approach. So look for another approach. So you're opening up avenues. So merong mga questions actually na quite very specific doon sa mga binigay mong examples, Marty. So like for example, yung alternative to iTaser, or are there apps for computational chemistry or softwares for computational chemistry? Would you care to share something that you
Yes,
know?
actually, yung binigay ko kanina sa homology, yung iTaser, pero based sa mga journals na nabasa ko, ang isa sa maganda pang ginagamit nila is yung modeler. Modeler yung pangalan. So, hindi ko lang sure kung free software siya kasi yung iTaser, sure ako na free siya. Kasi yun yung nirecommend sa akin ni Sir Ricky. Tapos yung sa software for docking, I think it's Autodoc Vina. Free din po yun. Free software din po siya. So, yung dalawang binanggit ko doon na software for homology and docking, parehas po sila na free software. So, yun lang. Kailangan nyo lang talaga ng internet and a functional laptop para ma-run yung inyong codes.
Additional question from Ma'am Gion. Kasi di ba most of the public schools right now are conducting distance learning modality, tapos printed modules. So, what can you suggest to schools who are conducting distance learning modality who can only have access to printed modules about how to write a research paper?
Well, yeah, medyo mahirap po kasi yan kasi ang pinaka-accessible kasing source of information ngayon is the internet. So kung wala po silang internet access, one thing that perhaps they might be able to coordinate is kapag po merong local libraries na pwede po silang manghiram ng books through the local yung mga barangay officials po nila. I think that's one thing po that we can encourage you guys to do. Or if possible po, baka po merong area sa kanila sa locality nila na merong internet access na baka po pwede silang magpa-search doon sa mga marunong mag-search sa internet, and then ano na lang, i-print na lang yung mga findings nila, yung mga nakuha nilang sources of information. So medyo mahirap po kasi talaga yan, no? So kasi sa mga ganyan, kapag printed modules lang, more likely yung sources of information nyo po ay printed din, printed books, printed journals. So siguro po kailangan talagang mag-coordinate with the local government and yung local libraries. And then universities too, kasi more likely meron silang mga ganyan, printed materials.
Yeah, I agree. Kasi since writing ito ng research proposal, you need to have your literature search as well. Kasi hindi ka magkakaroon ng magandang research proposal if you don't have a good literature search about background information about yung sa topic of interest mo. So, library, physical library is pwede, kaya lang bawal nga lumabas ngayon. So, the only thing talaga that we can do is through online. So wala talaga tayong ibang choice.
So,
Pero kung
makiusap kay barangay captain. Saka sa
makiusap sa barangay captain or
pa-wifi.
makiusap kay teacher, or si teacher makiusap sa people from university or people from the government to print yung mga related literature na kailangan ng mga estudyante for their research. Kasi we can only go through this successfully if we involve everyone
in the community.
Dito sa process na ito.
Okay, so thank you very much. So there are actually several questions about biodiversity, but I think it's a little bit topic specific. Okay, siguro like they're asking how would they start or conduct biodiversity study on certain type of species of fish. Okay. Instead of answering that, maybe you can give us some final words. So, eto na ako, magre-research na ako. Kasi nasa course ko yun. Nasa, ano ba ako, grade 10. So, kailangan ko na. So, siguro, kasi ganun, tanong naman nila how to conduct. So, ano ba yung mindset nila dapat? So, yun na lang siguro, natin. Kasi binigyan naman natin sila ng mga certain topics na pwede nila explore. So, kayo, kung nasa posisyon ano ba? Ano pa Tagalog nun? Basta if you were in their positions, if you were in their positions, ano ba yung dapat kong mindset? Kasi mag-start na ako ng So how would I approach this research subject?
Marty, bago
na
kasi
meron ako ngayong semester.
May suggestion lang ako, ate. Siguraduhin niyo may dagat kayo. Baka naman kasi kailangan naman kasi malapit yung dagat sa inyo kasi baka kung kailangan niyo pa magbiyahe, ninyo yung magagawa, no? And ako namimilo.
Find your ocean.
Find your ocean. Sabi nga ni Dr. Crisita Carmen Atienza. Hindi, Marty, answer it.
Ako, what I advise yung mga students ngayon, since we already gave you the entry points to these topics, the next thing that is best for you to do is to search the literature. Pick a topic of your choice, kung ano man po yung gusto nyong topic na nagustuhan nyo dun sa mga diniscuss ko, or pwede nyong i-extend yung application sa ibang studies. Like say for example, yung survey, may nagtatanong kanina ng food technology daw na topic, edi magpa-taste test kayo. Halimbawa, puto, tas putong may cheese, taste test nyo, pa-surveyan nyo kung alin yung mas masarap, edi you have a quantitative result.
Gaano kabilis mapanis kapag may cheese?
Oo, mga ganon. So, it's up to you to steer your minds. Ika nga sa na sinasabi nila, kailangan mag-isip din. Hindi puro asa sa spoon, hindi pwedeng spoon feeding. Research is about the thought process of a certain individual. Kung
creativity.
Creativity, ideation, lahat. Kasi kung masastuck ka sa thinking na dapat laging may topic na isasuggest sa'yo, you'll be left stagnant.
And then at the end of the day kasi, when you're working on a research project, dapat at the end of the day, masasagot nyo yung tanong na anong kahalagahan nitong ginagawa mo. Kasi kapag hindi mo masagot yung tanong na yun, clearly, merong kulang siguro. Hindi ko masabing mali, pero may kulang siguro dun sa pagkakabuo mo ng research process.
Or you're not appreciating the research process.
Yep.
Yeah, and in terms of dun sa ideation part, nasabi na to dun sa first course natin sa PhilSci Hub Research University na we always take cue from our environment and our current circumstances kasi napakadali na kung bubuksan lang natin yung isip natin, we can see from our situation right now, let's say food delivery, online selling, marami na tayong mapipick up na certain ideas na pwede nating i-research kung ano ba yung mabenta sa ganitong age group, ano ba yung paano natin may improve yung let's say sa COVID-19, paano natin may improve yung tawag dito pag-handle nung infection, ano ba yung effective ways. So we take our cue from our environment. Kung you're heavily forested area, pwede nating pag-aralan kung ano yung what's already there, 'di ba?
And sabi nga ni JP, you just have to scan your environment. Ano ba yung mga problema dyan sa paligid ninyo? For example, kung nasa lugar po kayo na puro mga magsasaka, nitong pandemic, ang hirap ibiyahe ng mga produkto.
Exactly.
So, ang daming mga gulay, mga prutas ang nabubulok. O baka pwede tayo makakamap ng technology, baka pwede yang lagyan balagyan niya ng naturally occurring na coatings para mapatagal yung shelf life noon, para hindi siya agad masira. So yung mga ganun bagay, you just have to
or kung paano siya maibebenta. 'Di ba? Kung paano siya maihatid sa mga consumers kasi ngayon parang Facebook is out there. Readily available na. So paano natin
doon sila pwedeng gumawa ng app.
Pwede kang gumawa ng app. Paano ba kayo makakahanap ng buyers ng gulay para hindi malugi yung mga magsasaka? Yung mga ganung bagay po. So siguro ang systemic issue here is that hindi po talaga kasi masyadong na-instill sa atin yung kultura na pag may nakita tayong problem sa paligid, hindi po tayo solution-oriented. Ina-acknowledge lang natin na,
may problema.
hindi mabenta.
Ganyan na yan eh.
Kawawa. Yun lang yung kawawa naman tayo. Tsaka ganun, walang support, isisisi sa iba. Huwag po natin isisi sa iba kung kayo naman, kaya nyo rin gumawa ng solution. Ganun po talaga nagpo-progress ang karamihan ng ibang mga lugar. Ang problema po ay hinahanapan ng solusyon. At research po typically, it's the research process that will actually bring you the solutions. Hindi po kasi yan pagising nyo, eto na, meron ng solution. Lalo po kung local yung problem, ay hindi niyo po masyado yung pwedeng iasa sa mga national agencies na eto, hindi kasi nila makikita yan lahat eh. So yun po. Kailangan
Ibabalik ko lang, Kuya Jeff, yung sinabi ko sa quote kanina na sinabi ni Sansu na wisdom is not obvious. You must see the subtle and notice the hidden for you to be victorious. Yeah. So, yung pong may mga wisdom, sila lang yung nagwawagi kasi sila yung nakakakita ng hindi nakikita ng iba. And this is a military strategist yung nagsabi nito. So, we are actually providing you with wisdom that you need. Ang wisdom na binigay namin sa inyo is the entry points to this certain types of topics na hindi nyo naman basta-basta may isip when you are actually doing this
and gusto ko lang i-qualify, Marty, rin wisdom po hindi po ibig sabihin nun dapat sobrang talino nyo. Hindi po. Iba po 'yon. Hindi po lahat ng nagtatagumpay na researchers ay sobrang tatalino.
Talino, yes.
Hindi po totoo 'yon. So hindi po porket yung matatalino sila na yung bibigyan ng solusyon, hindi po. Wisdom is a different kind of thing. It's how you learn from your environment and how you learn from your experiences and your failures and how you actually apply those learnings, to make things to solve, future problems. So yung tinatawag na wisdom.
Kasama go, sige Kuya JP.
Kasi at the end of the day naman, 'di ba, yung lahat ng efforts mo will be judged by the fruits of its labor, 'di ba?
Tsaka wisdom is tightly connected with grit. Hindi porket hindi ka na makaisip ng topic ngayon, you will give up. Yung grit, kasama yan sa pag-develop mo ng wisdom. Kung gaano kadami yung wisdom mo, it's the effort that you made and it's the grit process kung gaano ka kumapit dun sa gusto mong marating. So, nade-develop dun yung wisdom mo. Yun lang. So, if you fail the first time, baka makuha mo na sa second time. And if you fail in the second time, baka makuha mo na sa third time. Or you need to re-innovate yourself.
Gaya nga po na sinabi namin, nung nasa grad school kami, kada isang daang experiment, palyado yung lahat. So isipin nyo po, siguro po libong experiments bago kami nakakuha ng magaganda na nagamit talaga namin sa thesis namin. So test of character po ito. So yun po, kung if you really are after learning how to do research and to also come up with technologies, inventions, and findings that will impact your community or the society. So kailangan pong in as early as possible, kailangan nurture na natin yung ganong skills. So hindi po tayo nakakagawa ng experts overnight. So kung gusto niyo po talaga maging magaling sa research, you have to expose yourself in as early as possible and you have to be persistent. Kailangan po may tiyaga. Kailangan bangon lang ng bangon kapag nadadapa, kapag nagkakama. Ganun po.
Laban lang ng laban.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so thank you very much, guys. So I hope medyo nabago natin yung mindset ng ating mga students as well as our teachers. Okay, so research actually is a very exciting field. So malay mo, sa susunod, pwede pa tayong ito yung magiging focus ng career natin. So, saka hindi lang naman talaga sa science na apply yung research thinking. So, sa lahat ng aspects actually ng life natin, pwede natin siyang ma-apply. In any types of job, actually, we can also apply this research
It's a problem-solving skill.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's it for us today. But we have several announcements. Of course, this doesn't end in this session. So we have, binigyan namin kayo ng mga ideas, and then sa mga susunod namin mga webinar, bibigyan pa namin kayo ng mga further topics na pwede nyong i-explore. So, may mag-share ba ng slides? Okay, Jeff.
Okay, so may mga nakita po kasi kami tanong doon. So una is
okay. I'm sorry.
Meron daw ba ating software that they can use for statistical treatment of data? So ito po hindi nakalas dito, but on April 17, we have the 5th PhilSci Hub Research University training course on statistical design of experiment. So ito po is a professor from UP Los Baños will deliver that workshop. So ito, ang tagal pong hinihingi ito ng teachers at students at the high school and college level. So ito po will actually bring you a training course on the statistical treatment of data and design of experiment. And I think one thing that that our resource speaker will share is actually an online software that you can use to process your data.
All right.
Statistical software po talaga ito. Open access, hindi nyo po kailangan magbayad.
When is this? When?
April 17.
April 17 po. Yun po yung sunod na part. So, di ba tapos na tayo dun sa mga first part. Dito na tayo sa statistical treatment. So, meron na tayong data. Paano natin siya interpret? Okay?
That's true.
Yun po. And at this, yes, Jeff.
And then next week, so biodiversity research, discovery of new species, Dr. Connie Cañete Gibas, Saturday next week po, same time, 10 in the morning in the Philippines. She will guide you through. So yung mga gusto mag-biodiversity research, manood kayo next week kasi yun na yung kasunod natin. And then data science for college level and high school research projects by Professor Kevin Anthony Season. So ito po, bata siya pero expert siya. Isa siya sa mga up and coming experts like in this area in the Philippines. So bukod po dun sa lecture na gagawin niya, may workshop. So magdala kayo ng computer kasi kung gusto niyo matuto kung paano i-apply yung data science, for example, sa molecular biology, I think he has examples for that. May mga case study. So hindi lang po kayo matututo ng theory, tuturuan pa niya kayo, i-demonstrate pa niya kung paano ba siya gawin. Applicable to sa high school at college level. And then chemometrics, which is also like a very important area po of research dun sa mga interested dyan sa chemistry. So that's by Professor Gerardo Mangca. So it's on April 10 at 10 in the morning. And then cancer genome analysis. So ito po yung sinabi ko kanina by Professor Chad Creighton from the Baylor College of Medicine. So ito po April 24. So medyo puno po ang ating mga weekend para po sa mga gantong webinars. So we're hoping po that you can join us. On how, para for information po on how to register, punta lang kayo sa website. Nandun po lahat yun, yung registration links. Ayun po. And then, as we mentioned earlier, PhilSci Hub, and then our programs in PhilSci Hub Research University and PhilSci Hub Education. So, and then for the teachers out there po, meron kami ilo-launch soon. It's actually PhilSci Hub Ed Teaching Fellowship. So, gusto po kasi namin mamagawa is to mentor teachers on how to teach them in the most practical way. So ito po, hindi po yung traditional na educators teaching the teachers. Ito po, scientists. Kami po yung magme-mentor sa teaching fellows on how they can teach science in the most practical manner. So ito po, bibigyan namin kayo ng chance na mag-take ng training courses namin on teaching, lalo na po sa distance teaching. And then after that, we'll also give you the opportunity to share your work. Magagawa kayo ng module at magpe-present kayo ng work ninyo sa platform natin para po yung mga teachers po na na-train namin magti-train din dun sa mga teachers na nagpa-follow po sa ating page. So we'll provide you with information po on how you can, hindi po lahat siguro ma-accommodate namin. So may application period po yan. Pipilian po namin kung sino po talaga yung pwede namin i-train. So watch out for these announcements po. JP Martin, did I forget anything?
Wala na po. Ako wala na.
Okay. And then yung registration, yung e-certificate link po, they were all
It's posted already na.
Posted already. We cross-check po. So follow us subscribe to our YouTube channel po para ma-issuehan namin kayo ng certificates. And then point of clarification po, our e-certificates are actually auto-generated. So software po siya na gumagana. So give us up to about 7 days po before you follow up. And make sure na yung spelling po ng inyong
Yung info,
pangalan, ng inyong email address, at saka yung school ay tama. Kasi pag pumali yung ipinasok nyo sa Google Form, yun din po yung information na malalagay sa certificate nyo. So, ayun po. Muli, maraming salamat po sa pagsama sa amin. So, 3 oras na naman po ang ating pinagsama.
All right. So, thank you very much everyone. So, yung evaluation form nandito na sa Zoom chat and I think nasa YouTube comments as well. Okay, then make sure na tama po yung mga information, yung name nyo po. Kasi kung ano po yung nilagay nyo, yun yung lalabas sa certificate. And yung email address nyo is working kasi magpa-bounce back lang po siya. Okay, so see you again next week. Actually, fully filled po ang ating Saturday.
So let's every week.
Saturday date. Yeah, see you every Saturday.
Every Saturday.
Lunch date, brunch date po. Brunch date na ano kami lagi.
Okay, so
po. Ito po kasi
thank you guys.
Po, pinili talaga namin for you. So hopefully po masamahan niyo kami. Maraming salamat po ulit.
Have a happy weekend. Have a happy lunch.
Take care everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.